What is up, everyone? Welcome back to some more Higurashi. In the previous recording session, Tomitake ultimately ended up meeting the fate he usually does, though we got a bit more of a look into what typically happens during these moments. But however, Rika's determination to change things and make as much of a difference as she can led to Takano's plans being a little not quite foiled, but she had to like change some plans, which has led to the cops having a bit of a lead, a bit of a head start, I guess would be the better term, into investigating what happened, having some better ideas as to what happened to Tomitake, as what happened to her body double, so on and so forth. Rika ultimately hits the day she's supposed to die, gets all depressed, doesn't leave the house, but then she's like, but what if I do something? So she decided to do something. She calls the cops. The cops are there protecting her. Then all the homies show up. So now all the homies are there protecting her. And where we immediately left off is she had just gotten a phone call from Oishi, who Oishi said he was going to be on his way there. He'd be there in no amount of time. And then we cut back to the perspective of Oishi and his subordinate here in the vehicle. And I'm kind of worried that something's gonna end up happening to Oishi, because maybe we know these mountain dogs are like this elite assassination unit. We're pretty sure they got Rika's house tapped, bugged and wired and whatnot. So it wouldn't surprise me if they do a little some make it look like an accident. But without further ado, let's just jump back into it, shall we?
途中で食事に寄った方が良かったんじゃないですか？
そうですね。もうすぐ8時か。お昼が遅かったから忘れてました。とりあえず話を聞いたら、おたふくにお茶漬けでも食べに行きましょう。
警官を4人行かせてましたよね。交代を送らないと、古出さんが気を利かせて出前でも取っててくれればいいんですがね。
Oishi and Kumaga had passed through Okinomi and were getting closer and closer to Hinamizawa. They hurried on their way, driving through the dark streets.
古出理香の全てを話そうっていうのはとても気になるっすよね。
Oh, right. That's something I totally glossed over, is the fact that, like, when the homie showed up, Rika, gave him, all the info. She said, you know what? I'll fucking tell y'all everything. Everything I know, I'll let you in on. And just basically kind of confirms some stuff that we kind of knew, right? About, like, the existence of this disease and whatnot, and gave us a bit more backstory into what it was and the history behind its research and whatnot, but then also revealed to us there's these factions. Well, no, there's this secret organization which calls itself Tokyo, which is still kind of stupid, but the organization is called Tokyo, not to be confused with the fucking city of Tokyo. But within that organization, there's different factions, and it seems that Tomitake and Takano were part of separate factions, though Tomitake was not aware of Takano being part of a different faction. And they were initially funding the research for this disease as used as a potential bioweapon, and then eventually they were like, actually, I don't think that's the route we should go. And then they were like, well, since we don't get any benefit out of it, we should just cut research. But EDA was like, no, this is, we're doing good work here, let me do this. And then apparently Takano was this agent sent to sabotage things. That hasn't been outright confirmed, but that very much seems to be the case.
多分相当とんでもない話が飛び、あの村はね、本当の名前は鬼ヶ淵村。鬼ヶ淵ってのは沼ですからね。
沼なだけにそこが知れませんね。古出理香の護衛ですけどどうします？
彼女の話次第では秘密の場所にかくまった方がいいでしょう。雛見沢ってのは村が丸ごと魔物の腹中と同じなんです。あの村の中では何が起こるかわからない。とにかく聞いてみないことにはわかりません。
古出家の当主が命を狙われていて、園崎家次期当主はそれを守ろうと思っている。そんな状況下で誰が古出理香を？ あとは君吉家くらいしか勢力。
君吉家には臭い話は聞いてないんだけどな。やっぱり村には信仰を軸にした狂信的な勢力が隠れて、沼の底がどうなってるのか楽しみです。
The road they were on was cutting through the rice fields, leading them to pass by the scene of Jiro Tomitake's murder.
高野が富武を放置した。そこまでは間違いないと思いますが、鑑識のじいさま、覚醒剤は出なかったって言ったんですよね。
確かに薬物反応は出なかったそうですが、この世にはおかしな薬なんてきっと無数にある。それら全部が間違いなく使われていない。自分が知らない薬だから実在しないなんて、あったからにはあるんです。だからきっと富武に首をかき破らせる薬は実在する。そいつは犯人逮捕の折にたっぷり喋ってもらいますよ。あるいはフルでリカが話してくれると一番嬉しいんですがね。クマちゃんも今回の岐阜の件で決めつける捜査がどれだけ冤罪を生み出してきたかよく分かったでしょう。
ありゃひどかったっすね。あいつうちの署に嫌がったら俺でも許さないところです。
結局最後まで間違いは認めてませんからね。岐阜県警はあくまでもあの死体は高野美代だったで通すつもりのようです。でもうちは高野美代生存でいきますよ。あとは県警同士のトップ会談で決着。向こうのボンミスは確定してるんですから、認めると怒られると思って躍起になって上塗りしてるんですよね。いやはやそういう体質は改めないといけません。
The car suddenly shook. The concrete road had ended, leaving only gravel. At the point where the gravel road begins, you're officially in Hinamizawa. They continue to drive through the woods for a
クマ
while.
ちゃん、ちょいと止めて。
は
Oh, she told him to stop immediately. Kumagai quickly slammed on the brakes. Their seatbelts tightened up, keeping them in their seats.
どうしたんですか？
あの車
Yeah, I
何
knew
や
there
っ
was
て
gonna
ん
be
だ
some
ろう
kind of
な。
ambush.
こんなところで。
Oh, she tapped on the rearview mirror. There was a van parked just off the road. Rather beat up, it looked like it was used for a private company. There was no reason for someone to park their car here, especially at this time of night. Kumagai also thought it looked suspicious. The car seemed empty, but there was a light flashing in the woods nearby. Probably a flashlight.
不審ですね。それにしてもよく気づきましたね。
いつも言ってます。刑事は四六時中目を皿にしてろってことです。何やってんだろうな。不法投棄かな。まさか死体埋めてるんじゃないだろうな。あるいは刺激不足の安倍車のセンスからしてそれはないか。なあ、沖宮 PS どうぞ。聞こえてるかな。なはは。こんばん。
こちら沖宮 PS 感度良好です。
車両ナンバー紹介お願いします。獅子骨ハノ4344。
不詳。少々お時間もらいますが
お願いします。
おいさん、地図で見るとここ電話会社の施設がありますね。
電話会社の施設って何ですかそりゃ。
It was listed as a facility, but it wasn't staffed. It was just a place where machines were installed. Kumagai wasn't sure how telephone lines actually work, but either way, it seemed like some kind of connecting device was located there.
普通のワゴンだよな。電話会社にゃ見えませんね。
電話会社ならそう書いた車で来るはずっすよね。
委託の伝説業者か何かの可能性もあります。直接聞いた方が早そうですね。
She wasn't sure if that was the case. After all, why would any phone company go to do maintenance so late at night?
ちょいと行ってみましょうか。フォルデさんたちを待たせてますからね。
そうっすね。
His well-honed detective instinct was trying to tell him something. His feeling wasn't one that Oishi could easily explain. He has a strong sense that something was suspicious without any real reasoning behind it. Oishi trusted he could judge others' character with that sense.
ウグイス2よりウグイス1。車両が1台停車、2人降りました。おそらく刑事です。そちらへ接近中、1分未満で接触します。
It was pitch black, yet they could see the two newcomers clearly. They're probably using a night vision scope.
了解。全隊員、ウグイス2から5はグリーンライトをウグイス7から8は前後 100m のクリアを確認せよ。
Yup.
待機。ウグイス4。ウグイス4。
ウグイス5了解。
ウグイス7。了解。
ウグイス8了解。
ウグイスより本部。ウグイスより本部。電話設備工作中にトラブル。 私服警官2名の発砲許可を申請。
本部了解。許可を待て。
By the time Oishi Kumagai reached the phone facility, they were being watched from all directions. There were 2 pairs of binoculars and 2 sniper rifles pointing at them. The Mountain Dog operatives worked in 2-man units, a sniper and spotter, to secure the means of retreat. They had all taken different positions so that they could shoot Oishi no matter where he tried to run. They were all in camouflage suits, hiding deep in the woods. Oishi, of course, had no chance of spotting them. The snipers had their rifles trained on the detectives' heads. Oishi and Kumagai had no idea that they were on the verge of losing their very lives. The sniper rifles had their safeties on, but a flick of the thumbs would release them. In other words, they were ready to shoot if given the order. The detectives found the fenced-in machinery right behind the parked van. There was a sign there saying it was property of the Nippon Telegraph and Telephone Corporation, and another sign warning people to keep away.
どうも。
すみません。作業中ですんで入らないでもらえますかね。
There were 4 men working there, wearing blue overalls. They had a toolbox open and were working on some wires.
どうも仕事中お邪魔してすみ。警察の者。いえね。不思議なところに不思議な時間に車が止まっていたもので、どうしちゃったのかなと。
そうですか。うちらももうちょっとで終わりますんで。
おたくら、どちらさんです？
Good evening, officers. We're almost done here. It's like, that does answer my question of what are you doing here?
電電の人じゃないでしょ。
ああ、失礼しました。おこのぎ電気設備工事と申します。あれすみません。
おこのぎ電気設備工事さんって会社どちらです？
はい。沖宮になりますけど。
会社の電話番号と住所を教えてくだ。
なんでそんなこと聞きますか？
電話番号忘れちゃいました。
Oh, she looked at them with a piercing glare. Their response was very suspicious. Usually the vehicle of an electric company is full of various types of electrical equipment and repair tools. However, the van parked there had nothing inside and looked just like an ordinary car. Also, a company vehicle usually has the name of the company painted on it. But this was just a plain van with no markings on it. None of that was the reason that Oishi found them suspicious, though. It was their attitude that bothered him. They didn't sound or look like typical contractors. They were obviously not electricians. It was far too late in the day, and there were far too many of them. They were also clearly suspicious of Oishi. However, that was all you could tell just by looking around. Found them suspicious, but had no idea what they were up to. One of the men told Oishi the phone number. Kumagai wrote down the number so he could ask the station to call and confirm it was real.
私らそんな怪しいもんじゃ。
あんたら怪しすぎですって。一体何者です？委託業者なら作業写真用に作業前作業後とか書かれた黒板とかあったりするでしょう。そういうのもないです。だいたいあんた。
おまわりさん、そんな意地悪言われちゃ勘弁してください。私ら早く作業を終えて帰らなきゃならないんです。
Judging from their progress, it didn't look like they'd be cleaning up anytime soon. In fact, it almost seemed like they were just getting started.
もう化けの皮は電気屋に化けるときはまずバイトして勉強してからにしな。
Oishi raised his voice threateningly. Members of the Mountain Dogs gradually started to look more and more annoyed. Oishi looked over their expressions, gave them a big wide grin. However, Oishi had no idea. He thought he could handle these suspicious people with no issues. Of course, in reality, they were horrific demons that he had no chance against. Meanwhile, Kumagai was heading back to the car. He was intending to contact the police department. He was going to call the station using the radio. Then, in turn, the police department would contact the NTT. That way it would become clear who they were really dealing with.
本部よりウグイス発砲許可。
ウグイス7、ウグイス8クリア。
The sniper was still aiming at Kumagai's head as he headed back toward their car. The safety, that last line protecting Kumagai's life, was disengaged. The sniper put his finger on the trigger. He was wearing a glove with the fingertips cut out. The finger poking through the hole was very rough and merciless. For as soon as he slightly moved that finger, he would take someone's life.
ウグイス1より狙撃犯、オールグリーン。
Kumagai heard a quiet noise. It was similar to the sound of the jump rope they used to use as a whip when he was little. That was the last thought Kumagai had in this world. Kumagai collapsed onto the gravel. That was it. He didn't even twitch. Oishi was laying on his back on the concrete after getting shot in the chest. His lungs were filled with blood, which began to pour out of his mouth. Oishi only realized they'd been shot when the world began to blur before his eyes. As his world keeled over, he saw a man in a work uniform leveling a gun at him, but it didn't matter anymore as he started drowning on his own blood.
沖宮 TS より先ほどのナンバーが大石社どうぞ。大石社応答願います。電波大石社応答願い。
出ませんね。大石さんが車両所、誰の車だ？村人の車いたって。何者？大石さんが聞いてくるからには突起事故欄はS 号減点もなし。
あの人根に持つとなかなか忘れないタイプなんだよ。
ウグイスより本部2名を射殺。作業を再開。
本部了解。警官の車両処理は3佐。ウグイスは警官2名を排除。作業を再開。
おやすみなさい、大石さん。私の尻尾をつかめてもう一息だと思ったでしょうに。コーヒーをもらえるかしら。
どうぞ。しかし厄介な展開になっ R 宅には以前私服警官数名とそれから友人数名がいるそうです。 R は自分が今夜殺されることに作戦が漏れています。やはり決行は延期すべきでは。
明日の朝には死体が見つかっていないといけない。お偉いさんたちの日程上その日が一番都合がいいって話なんだから作戦は決行します。
Crucial part of this final mission was the death of Rika and what came after that. They couldn't just kill her whenever they wanted. Doing it at the right time was vital.
山犬による過剰な警備にかえって過敏。
違うわね。漏洩じゃない。予言よあれは。富武の死と、そして私ですら知り得なかった偽装。あの子は女王なのよ。南沢の頂上存在の頂点に立つ女王で、巫女で降臨したるお社様の血脈に連なる。神を欺くことなどできない。知られるのは宿命だったのよ。フルでリカをあっさり暗殺などできるわけがなかった。いいわよ、リカちゃん。あなたと私、どちらがお社様の伝説を受け継ぐにふさわしいか。あなたの死はお社様のたたりの最後を飾り、私の作り上げた物語はその時こそ
It was now past 8 p.m. Mion ordered some noodles for us, her treat. We also ordered some food for the 4 officers and we all ate together. We were supposed to call it a night as soon as we talked to Oishi, but he's still not here. However, we all took it easy, assuming that they'd get here sooner or later. It's getting late. Once we get to Hinamizawa, there aren't many places to get something to eat. I'm sure they're having a quick dinner before coming here. However, the 4 officers seem anxious. They all had families, but Oishi didn't tell them how late they'd have to be out here. They're hoping that Oishi will bring other officers to relieve them so they can go home. They called the station, but all they said was that Oishi was on his way, and we should wait because he'll be here soon.
遅いね、大石さん。渋滞にでも巻き込まれたんだよ。ちょうど帰宅ラッシュの時間帯にぶつかっただろうからね。おまわりさんもお昼からずっといてくれ。交代が来てあげないとかわいそうですわね。
そうだな。何時に終わるのかもわからない仕事って疲れるもんな。
警察の人には休んでもらって私たちが夜景にでも立ちます。聡子のトラップワークで不審者の接近を阻むとか。甘いですわね、シオンさん。ここは私とリカの家なんでしてよ。常に二重三重のトラップが張り巡らせてありますわ。そうなんだ。神社で遊ぶときは注意しないとね。
With our stomachs full, the mood in the house had returned to a light-hearted one. True, we shouldn't be so relaxed, but knowing that Oishi would be here shortly made us feel relieved. But he's so late. He said he'd be here in an hour. Mio mentioned he might have gotten stuck in traffic, but I'm sure Oishi was considering that. That's why he told me it'd take him about an hour. And it had now been 1 hour since the time Oishi was supposed to get here. I want to believe that he's getting something to eat on the way, but I'm starting to get concerned. Oishi still hasn't shown up. It's almost 11 o'clock. The officers are completely exhausted. They had even started to smoke cigarettes outside. My friends are becoming tired too. Satoko is yawning. It's way past our bedtime. Everyone else is getting tired and sleepy. We've been spending our time watching TV and reading manga. I can feel my fears succumbing to sleepiness. Today is almost over. I'm going to survive the day I'm supposed to die. Does that mean that I escape my deadly fate? No. I'll have to fight endlessly from tomorrow on. I was going to discuss that with Oishi. Since he's not here, I don't know what to do from this point on. Suddenly the phone rang, breaking the silence.
大石さんか。
もしもし、フルでな。
夜分遅くに申し訳ありません。沖宮署の小宮山と申します。すみません。うちの大石ですが、
いいえ、僕たちもずっと待っているところ。
そうですか。わかりました。申し訳ございませんが、そちらに行っている警官に今から応援が行くので、引き継いだら祈祷するようお伝えいただけますか。
That seems like some bullshit. I don't remember if there's a guy named Komiyama that I know of at the police department, but that seems easily to be something that they could fake, especially with Oishi being taken out. Like, oh yeah, no, we'll send some people to relieve you. We'll send some people to relieve the officers there. And then they show up, it's just like, oh yeah, here's the new officers, and it's actually the mountain dogs in disguise. Though you'd think like the current officers would like be like, I don't know who these people are, these aren't officers. But also they've already mentioned how exhausted these current officers are and how badly they just want to get home. Would they be willing to ignore that?
わかりましたです。それで、大石はどこに？
夕方頃直接そっちへ行くと連絡があったきりだったので、てっきりそちらへお邪魔してるものと思っていました。大石と交代で警官たちが戻ってくることになってたのですが、いつまでも戻らないのでどうなっているのかと思いまして。
That's what I'd like to know, but arguing with the man on the phone wouldn't accomplish anything. I hung up and gave the message to the officers downstairs. Looked like everyone already heard our exchange on the phone.
どうしたんでございましょうね。遅いにも程がありましたよ。何か重要な仕事があったりして道草でも食ってるとか？
I mean, kind of.
それなら電話すると思うな。これから行くって電話したんだよ。これだけ遅くなったら絶対に電話してくれると思うな。
まさか東京って連中に襲われたとかか？
まさかと言いたいところですが、リカちゃまの言うような連中が相手なら絶対多分休養が入ったんだよ。それで電話をするのを忘れてるんだと思う。
Oh, Mion.
向こうも大の大人。それも天下の大石だよ。
I mean, he's a tough guy. That doesn't mean he's bulletproof.
そうそう簡単には消されないって。来るなら早く来て。
Satoko yawned. Everyone laughs, but some of them are trying not to yawn themselves. We can't stay up forever. We decided that we'd call it a night once the replacement officers arrived. I'm sure I've survived past the time I was supposed to die. That's probably because the police were protecting me. Perhaps both Takano and the mountain dogs are also on my side, and they took care of the murderer. I don't know who is changing my fate. Maybe my fate hasn't been changed, and I'm going to get killed soon anyway. I don't know if it's because of the police or because of the mountain dogs. The only thing I know for sure is that I'm still alive. Soon, I heard the noise of someone walking on gravel on the shrine grounds. One of my friends suggested that it might be Oishi, but I doubt it. I don't want to expect him to be disappointed when it's not. I'm starting to think like Hanyu.
こんばんは。沖宮署から参りました。小宮山と申します。
It wasn't Oishi. Two of his fellow detectives had arrived instead. They were going to stay downstairs and have the four officers return home. They also told my friends to leave.
あとは私たち警察がいますので、どうぞ皆さんは家に帰ってくだ
Well,
さ
that
い。
seems mad sus. Yeah, no, that seems mad sus. Yeah, don't worry, we've got it. You go home. Like, nah.
ご家族の方が心配します。
みんなありがとうです。刑事さんたちが来てくれましたし。もう本当に大丈夫。邪魔でなければ私たちも泊まるよ。
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be fucking trusting anyone at this point. Like, other than the homies. I'd be like, yeah, nah, let the homie stay over. That's the move.
大丈夫なので、第一、お布団も寝巻きもないのです。じゃあ明日、これからはなるべくリカちゃんと一緒にいるようにしよう。部活はリカちゃんの家でやるっていうのでどうかな。あら、それなら素敵でございます。僕たちの家の床が抜けてしまうかもしれませんです。
違いねえな。
じゃあリカちゃま、私たちこれで帰りますけど、用心してください。暗闇で一人になるなんてことは絶対しないように。気をつけますです。じゃあね、また明日。はいです、また明日。
See you tomorrow. Am I really going to see them tomorrow? I have no clue. I've tried so many things over the past 100 years. I've done many things, and I have memories of most of them. That's why I feel so scared on the day I die. It's the only day that I have no memory of. I don't even know if I'm approaching or escaping my death right now. All I know is that this fear is going to continue until I find some kind of solution. As I started getting ready to go to bed, Satoko suggested that I should sleep in my regular clothes rather than in my pajamas. She was thinking that I should remain dressed just in case someone tries to attack me in my sleep. It sounded ridiculous, but she was just trying to be considerate. I decided to do what she told me to. Satoko seemed so sleepy until a few minutes ago, but she suddenly started passionately explaining to me all the traps she set on the shrine grounds. She assured me that strangers will end up trapped if they try to sneak inside this building. To someone else, it might sound like she was just trying to brag, but Satoko was trying to make me feel better. After everyone else left, she noticed how scared I looked. Satoko's kindness and everyone else's kindness. I feel it was the right decision for me to talk to my friends, even if that won't end up changing my fate.
Rika.
Fuck you. Hanyu showed up again. She looked upset, so she was probably still thinking that I could get killed at any minute. I'm actually starting to feel a little better. I might get killed tomorrow, but I feel like I can rest safely at least tonight. I'm more concerned about the fact that Oishi didn't show up. Still, even if he didn't, the other detectives are here and will stay on guard downstairs without sleeping. As long as they're here, I think I'll be safe tonight.
どうしたの？お腹でも出前じゃん。冷蔵庫のジュースでも飲む？
Anya would usually cheer right up when I suggested drinking some juice, but not this time. Her face looked pale, as if she wasn't even alive. Something out of the ordinary clearly happened.
どうしたの？もうすぐ時間がやってきますのです。
That sounded far more like a declaration than a prediction. Even Hanyu doesn't have any memories of my death. There's no way she can tell when I will be killed. However, she sounded so certain just now. Perhaps we can feel it in the very cells of our body. Our bodies understand fate far better than we do. Up until now, I felt reassured that we could get through it somehow if we were all together. But as I clung to that life preserver with the hole leaking air, I was starting to drown in a sea of despair and struggling to keep my head above water. No, I can't let myself feel that way. I have to believe.
大丈夫よ。私は抗う。たとえ明日殺されるとして。
Anya just gave me a look of faint sadness. That silence told me that my pitiful hope was going to push me down to a futile reality. I stared at Satoko as she continued to brag about her traps. If I'm getting killed shortly, Satoko won't be safe either. I quickly interrupted her talk about traps. The time was 1 in the morning. As it's hardly a big city, 1 a.m. in Hinamizawa is in the middle of the night. The darkness here gets very deep. There's light leaking out from the first floor where 2 detectives sat on guard, but everything else was pitch black. Even the moonlight seemed indistinct.
予定時刻1階には刑事に2階は消灯してすでに1時間以上。本部より3査。
こんなに月の綺麗な夜だもの。
刑事は排除でよろしいです。
そうね、今夜古出神社にいた人間は全てが忽然と姿。それでいいわ。
本部より大鳥作戦開始。保証の刑事2名はなお発砲は許可しない。繰り返す、発砲は許可しない。本部よりウグイス大鳥が作戦を開始する。電話線を遮断せ。ウグイス了解、遮断する。
They've been working to disable the phone lines just in case their target tried to contact the police during the attack. That mission was what Oishi happened to bump into.
ほんじゃ、大鳥湾より全隊員へ突入準備。1階の刑事2名と2階の同伴者1名を排除せよ。痕跡を残せん。発砲禁止。ガスも使えんね。テーサーを使え。単銃で武装してるぞ。撃たせるな。
おこのぎ、 素人
まあ仕事です。大鳥セブン8全バックアップは周辺警戒を厳重にされたし。大鳥セブン前進する。
Two men in uniform slowly approach the building. Mountain Dog's uniform is gray, so it didn't blend in with their surroundings at all. However, it doesn't look as suspicious as real camouflage suits. Of course, they look suspicious enough creeping up to the house like that anyway. They can both see light leaking from the door and hear the voices of the detectives. Rika would typically use the sliding door to get inside. The door was locked, but the Mountain Dogs had obtained a spare key a long time ago. They put the key in the keyhole, but it wouldn't go in smoothly. They were certain it would make some kind of noise when they turned it. The detectives would notice them the minute they did that. They'd have to rush inside and defeat them in one swift burst. Phoenix's 7 and 8 glanced at each other.
大鳥セブンより本部準備位置に突入指示を行う。
高野です。綺麗に決めるのよ。行きなさい。
了解。突入する。
Turned the key in a hurry and opened the lock. By the time the detectives turned around, the door was already open. The two Mountain Dogs had stepped inside. They aimed their weapons at the detectives while the latter were still turning around. In a fight like that, the first 2 seconds are the most crucial moments. The detectives collapsed, making minimal noise. There were needles stuck in their bodies, and those needles were connected via wires to the attackers' guns. In other words, the weapons those two had weren't ordinary guns, they were stun guns in the shape of firearms. Instead of bullets, they shoot out electric needles that electrocute their victims into unconsciousness. Normally, they would be non-lethal weapons that allow the shooter to capture their victim without harming them much. They're tasers that had been modified. The two dogs started walking up the stairs as soon as they confirmed the detectives were no longer breathing. In the next moment, they heard a loud noise above them.
こちら大鳥 R 以下2名が感づいた。2階の窓から裏の茂みへ逃走している。大鳥4、5、そっちへ行くぞ。大鳥4、沈黙。
Phoenix 4 spotted the two girls start after them, but he suddenly stepped on something hard. I was like, yeah, because we actually know for sure Satoko got them traps in the mountains. We already seen that shit play out. With a cheap sounding explosion, the area was filled with smoke. That was the trap Satoko had set using firecrackers. That had proven to be a very fortunate idea. Mountain Dogs dropped to the ground, assuming they were under fire. That gave Rika and Satoko a chance to escape.
リカの言う東京なんですの？多分ね。いいから走って。捕まったら殺され
Yeah,
るわよ。
now's not the time for questions, Satoko. We gotta fucking go.
どうした応答し。今の音は何？
こちら大鳥5。銃撃を R は突破した。追撃する。
くそ、感触玉か何かだ。畜生め。
さとこちゃんね。やるわね。
ああ？ナス。近場の班は急行しろ。人家に逃げ込まれたらアウトだぞ。大鳥18。発見した。
18, Jesus, how many Phoenixes do you have? Like, I get it, they're like this spec ops unit, but like, goddamn, we're up to 18 now?
追跡中。
二人は土地勘が強いわよ。早く抑えないと確実に見失うわ。
This wasn't a game of hide and seek, it was a game of tag. Several men in uniform were chasing after Rika and Satoko. They weren't idiots, so they didn't waste energy on a futile act of shouting, wait. This was a quiet, deadly game of tag in the middle of the night.
どこへ行きバラバラになって追っ手を振り切りましょうです。
That's a terrible idea.
落ち合うのはミーの家。地下の隠し部屋なら安全だし、外部と連絡も取れますです。
Satoko had no idea that Mion had a basement in her house, but she didn't have time to ask anything about it under current circumstances. All she did was nod. The next moment, I felt my left foot catch on something and I fell down to the ground. God damn it. Must have tripped on a rock or a piece of concrete.
サトコは逃げ、あんたも殺されちゃう。
But Satoko wouldn't move on without me. She came back to lend me a hand. I stood up without her help, but this cost us too much time. One of the men had almost caught up with us. I didn't know what to do, but Satoko, upon seeing him, quickly reacted. Satoko ran toward him and kicked him with all her might. Her foot landed right in his face. Wish I had a camera. There were two more of them right behind the first man. I can see them clearly now. They're the gardeners from that landscape company. They're wearing the same uniforms Okanogi's always wearing. They must be the Mountain Dogs. Now I'm certain that Takano is the culprit. Now that I know that, I can do something about it in the next world. But if I die now, will I lose my memory again? I can't die now. I need to survive so I can keep my memories. Satoko took something out of her pocket and threw it at them. It was something like sand and it blinded them. However, even that can only buy us a few seconds. Satoko tried to run, but she froze as soon as they aimed their weapons at us. Their stun guns are only shaped like firearms. Satoko, not knowing that, thought they were real guns. Knowing that she'll be shot if she turned and ran, Satoko tried to attack them instead. Of course, there are 3 of them. Most would think it impossible to drive them off, but Satoko didn't think about that. She had a 100% chance of dying if she tried to run, and she might as well fight back because she might have a 1% chance of defeating them. Satoko's determined to save me, even at her own expense. But I can't stay in this world if it means losing Satoko. I'm dying anyway. I'd rather die for Satoko's sake than lose her. But another me was shouting in my mind. If I don't survive this, I'll lose this memory. If I die without keeping this memory, this life and everything I've learned will all be wasted. Should I escape and leave Satoko behind? That's right. I should use this experience to my advantage in my next life. I should just let go of her in this world. Not that easy. Nope. But I know in my heart, there's no way I can win against these guys. I'm sure their backup will get here if we take our time to fight them. Should I fight them for her, or should I leave so I can confront my true enemy? Oh. It auto picks. I was getting ready to like save, but it's just like, no. I mean, that is what I was going to pick regardless. Like, I wasn't going to leave Satoko behind. Are you out of your fucking mind? Satoko's bravery gives me courage. If I left her, I'd lose my motivation to defeat fate. I don't care if I lose my memories. It only took 100 years for me to get this information. I don't care if I have to spend another 100 years in this same June. I can't leave Satoko. I had noticed something. They're only aiming at Satoko. There must be a reason why they can't shoot me. So I stood in front of Satoko to protect her. Just as I expected, they put their guns down, prepared to take us out without weapons. They must think this is my final speech. Let me talk until I was finished. Yeah, they're gonna let her talk, but that gives time for something to happen. Something. I don't know what. Something. The next moment, one of them dropped to the ground. Keiichi had run toward them and kicked him from behind. That's gang. Keiichi had kicked him right in the small of his back, and the dog was squirming on the ground. The other two tried to retaliate, but they were too late. Mion grabbed one of the guy's arms from behind and flipped him down to the ground. Must be some kind of martial art. I've seen something like that in an action movie before. Reina tried to push the remaining dog down with all her strength, but that wasn't enough to take him out. Tried to aim his gun at Reina, but she had already done what she was supposed to. All she needed to do was get his attention. Shion had snuck up behind him and she fired her stun gun into his neck. The stun gun made a snapping noise and the dog fell down to the ground with the rest of his friends. Yes, gang. Of course they did, as gang.
帰り際にね、すっごく不審な人がずっと草陰に潜んで。いやー、よく見つけたよな。あの暗闇で。レナには嘘も明細も通用しないってことだな。
So, figuring he would leave if they spoke to him, they secretly staked out that suspicious man. They started following us as soon as they heard the sounds of firecrackers.
ここでみんなに救われる。とにかく、ここどうする？これから。私たち地下でかくまってもらえるとかいう話で。地下最後殿で。確かにあそこなら都合がいいで。しかもあそこ武器も隠してませんし、そういうのは言わない。とにかく私もあそこには秘密の通路がいくつもあるから連中の裏をかけるよ。なら急ごう。追っ手が来てる。
White van was approaching us at high speed. It obviously belonged to the mountain dogs. The van stopped not far from us and more people in uniform jumped out. There were at least 6 of them. If we all run, the slowest runner might get caught, so we should take them down while we can. I don't know if they have a license, but Mion and Shion know how to drive a car. We can take their van and get away from here.
6人だ。ちょうどいいね。全員の全力でぶちのめして車をいただこう。あそれは明暗ですわね。そうと決まりゃ速攻だぜ。
Mountain dogs were ready to chase us. They had no idea that we would try and attack them instead. Reina's always the first one to make a move in this kind of situation. She gets so determined once a decision is made. She immediately singled out one dog and punched him in the nose. Another one tried to grab her from behind, but Keiichi kicked him in the side as hard as he could.
おいおいレナ、やり合うときは
ケイチ君に任せるよ。よろしくね。レナさんの茨城時代ってめちゃくちゃ興味あります。というか、人殴るのに躊躇なさすぎ。スタンガン使うのに躊躇ないあんたが言わない。
Given that Shion had that stun gun, the mountain dogs were reluctant to go after her. They were scared of the very dangerous weapon she had in her hand. Thanks to that, Shion had stopped one of them for certain. It was fortunate for us that they didn't have any guns of their own. They had no way of countering Shion's stun gun. Sought to go attack from behind. She encircled his neck with a jump rope and pulled. Oh damn. Shion followed up, quickly hitting him with a stun gun. What was I doing during all that? The only thing I can do is run around and try to get their attention. They're pursuing me after all. They want to catch me more than anything else. That leaves them open to attacks from my friends. Keiichi had already hit the one trying to grab me. I think we have a chance here. May not be able to take all of them down, but we can try and find a chance to escape to their vehicle.
リカちゃんから話を聞いていたとき、とんでもねえ奴らだとビビっていたが、どう？
みーちゃんの部活メンバーは、つまりそのくらい強いってことなんだね。恐れないというのが多分強さの秘密ですね。お姉の部活は遠慮ってやつをなくす訓練みたいなもんですから。
If we all fight together, we can win this 6-on-6 battle. If any one of us wasn't here, they'd beat us easily. We'd end up dead. If my friends hadn't stayed behind, I would have been killed by now. We can do it. We can make it. The dogs Shion took down with their stun gun were starting to wake up. The ones that we knocked out earlier were also up and chasing us again. We have to get out of here. This isn't the time for me to just be running around.
やってやるわ。リカ。
Fuck you.
羽生。あなたは諦めない悪あがきがどれだけの力を持つか、そこで見てなさい。私は打ち破る。私たちは打ち破る。今からね。それをあなたの目の前で見せてあげる。よし、みんないいね。一撃で決めるよ。それから車を奪って逃げる。はいです。僕もやりますですよ。
気に入ったぜリカちゃん。よっしゃ、行くぞ
On Keiichi's signal, we attacked 6 of the mountain dogs in unison. Time gradually slowed down. It really felt like I was trying to overcome that impossible wall of time and change my fate. However, time continued to slow even further until it stopped. What's going on? I felt like the film reel of a movie had gotten hung up partway through. Like time itself had come to a standstill.
羽生、どういうこと？その時がどうして？
Wearing a sad expression, Hanyu pointed at Keiichi. I finally noticed something. All my friends had noticed already, except for Keiichi.
その胸の前に浮いているのは
何って？あ？これなんだよ。
Time had stopped, just when Keiichi was about to hit his opponent. He then realized that something was floating in front of his heart. It was a bullet. Yep, a metallic silver cone. That was the first thing I could think of.
嘘。ケイちゃん。
なんだよこれ、まさか銃弾？
That's exactly what it was. The bullet had stopped about 15 centimeters away from Keiichi's chest just before it would enter his body. That's right. Once time starts moving again, it will slam into his chest. In other words, it's too late. Keiichi will immediately die when time starts up again.
誰が撃ったって、相手は6人。誰も銃なんか持って、あそこ、ワゴン車のところですわ。
Setsuko couldn't point at the van. Time had completely stopped after all. We could see another person staying near the van. There had actually been 7 people inside, not 6. That 7th person was the one who fired the bullet. We hadn't seen her at all. That person is someone we all know very well. Yes, it's Takano.
高野さんだ。高野さんが撃ったの？ケイチ君は？
In the frozen world, Takano was smiling, still aiming her gun at Keiichi. Takano had been watching us from the van this whole time. She came out and fired her gun, knowing that we hadn't seen her at all.
そっか、 なるほど。やっぱり黒幕は高野さんだったんだな。
どうしよう。ケイちゃん、なんとか体をひねって
バカ。弾丸だって止まるくらい俺だって動けるわけがねえだ。
なら時間が動き出すのと一緒に上半身を反らすんです。そうすれば少しでも違うかもしれませんわよ。
Everyone was desperate to save Keiichi. However, no matter how hard we thought, we couldn't come up with any ideas to save him from the bullet. We were so desperate that Keiichi started to laugh.
なんかよくわからないけどさ、とにかくこうなっちまったものは仕方がない。時間が動き出せば俺は死ぬだろう。死ななくてもまあ少なくとも戦力にはならなくなるな。だからみんな今のうちに、そして目の前の敵と高野さんをぶちのめして車を奪うことを考えるんだ。
ケイイチが死んでもダメです。そんな世界は嫌。羽生、これが運命だ。避けられない運命だというの。大丈夫ですよ、リカ。
Fuck you.
忘れられます。忘れられますから。嘘だよ。ケイちゃんがこのまま死んじゃうなんて。やめなよ、みーちゃん。とにかく目の前の倒れるケイイチくんに振り返る時間をきっとケイイチくんは望まない。
ああ、そうだぜ、レナ。頼むぞみんな。まずはこの場を逃げ延びて。多分こいつらは大石さんをもう、だからあれだけ待っても来なかったんだ。みんな生き延びろよ。絶対だ。
ケイイチ。
リカちゃん、最後の最後に運命なんて覆せるって大見え切っておきながら最初にリタイアしちまう。
Sounded just like Takano's regular laughter, but it was the scariest noise I'd ever heard.
根性の名残は尽きた。
高野さん、これで俺たちが負けた。
見終わったのね、走馬灯。
The silence suddenly ended and the clamor of reality returned. An explosive sound then hit Keiichi straight in the chest. I watched Keiichi collapse right in front of me. He fell down on his back while his blood splattered everywhere. After that, he stopped moving. There's no way any of us weren't shocked by that. We tried to take down the foes in front of us, but more came from behind. We tried to struggle as best we could, but there was no way we could win against all those adults. I did my best to fight them off, but they pulled my hair and picked me up as if I weighed nothing. I heard everyone's desperate screams of resistance. The comforting, courageous unity we showed right before Keiichi was shot shattered like glass. The debris of that glass lay sadly on the ground. Takano's annoying laughter was still echoing inside my ears.
高野より本部制圧したわ。私の言ったものを準備させ、それから死体がたくさん出るから死体袋が5つと血を流すのに持ってこさせて。
She needs 5 bags. My body froze up, but time did not. Takano, laughing, pointed her gun at Mion's head.
あなたの背中の入れ墨、後で見せてもらうわね。
見たってつま。
そう、私は楽しい。
やめて、みーちゃんを撃たないで。
Takano shook her head in response to her in a scream.
ダメよ、ミオンちゃんが部長さんなんだから。
嘘。やめ。
There was a dull noise followed by Mion's body twitching. We all tried to break free from the men restraining us as Takano calmly shot Mion. However, they were too strong, and all we could do was squirm like insects. Takano was enjoying watching us struggle. She then stepped towards Satoko. Shion started screaming curses at her.
あなたが先に撃たれた。おとなしくしてればもう数秒は余計に生きられたのに。
やめてシオンさん、挑発なんかしても意味がありませんでしたよ。
You know, of all the ways I thought this chapter was gonna end, I never would have expected having to watch all the fucking club members get fucking shot down one after the other. That's that's fucking rough. I know why she's doing that. Shion wants to protect Satoko for as long as she can. Motherfucker. She's trying to do what Satoshi told her to do. Takano didn't care one whit for Shion's feelings. Stepping over Keiichi's body, she approached Shion.
私、サトシ君を。そうなんでしょ。
会いに行くね。だから教えてあげ。
Shion's body twitched. That had followed the dull sound of another gunshot. Just two dull sounds had stolen away the lively Sonozaki sisters. It didn't add up. I started shaking from fear when it hit me just how easily Takano can take away lives.
あら、次はあなたが撃たれたいの？
Of course, Satoko has to be the last one. God damn it. Of course, that has to be the last person Rika watches fucking die. Ah. Ha.
黙ってれば最後の順番になったのに。
Keiichi, Mion, and Shion died. The oldest one of us left was Reina. Reina didn't want to see Satoko and me die before she did.
連続開始事件はお社様のたたりの代行者のつもりだ。
代行者じゃ、私がたたりを下すのよ。あなたには見せられないわね。お社様の怒りがこれからこの村に下るのは、それは私が起こす私のたたり。そう、私はまさにお社様その時、私は人としての域をようやく超えることができるの。まあ、あなたには私の気持ちはわからないでしょうね。人を超えて神になろうとする心地よさなど誰にも理解できないわよ。
無理だと思うな。高野さんがどれだけお社様のふり、所詮はごっこ遊び。お社様になんかあなたはな
れるわよ。これからなるもの。
Reina laughed at her. Takano seemed very upset to hear that laugh. My goat. My goat. Right before you go, you fucking get under their skin. God, I love you, Reina.
何がおかしい？
無理だよ。だってお社様はいるんだもの。
Those were Reina's last words.
最後は聡子ちゃん。あなたは殺しても殺さない。でもあなたは生きた研究資料だからね。東京はあなたの生きたままの捕獲に懸賞金をつけてくれ。大した額じゃない。私の取り分はせいぜいヨーロッパに旅行に行ったら、まあ生け捕りにしてもあなたは結局はろくな目に遭わない。生きたまま頭蓋を切開されるのが関の山よ。それに私この場で撃ち殺してあげるのもどっちがいい？
そんなの決められるわけないでございますわよ。
Satoko shouted back at her. Her eyes were full of tears.
じゃあブロッコリーとカリフラワー、緑色はどっち？
いえ、ブロッコリー。
Fuck. Okay, whoa. As soon as I heard that same dull sound, Satoko stopped moving. Takano smiled and said, "Good girl," to what used to be Satoko.
本当に今夜は月の綺麗な素敵な夜だことね。あなた、そして殺すわ。女王感染者の死体があなたはここから遠く離れた東京の地での醜い政治的勢力争いの具になるのよ。そして鬼ヶ淵村の伝説のピリオドとなる。
私をどういう殺し方にするか。
あら、言ってみて。
I'm not going to say it, but I know. It's Watanagashi. She wants to do the real Watanagashi using my body. I'm sure she's planning to cut open my stomach and pull out my guts. To do that, she'll make me inhale some chemical to put me to sleep. I vaguely remember that part.
想像がつじゃあおやすみなさいリカちゃん。
One of the dogs approached me with a handkerchief soaked in a chemical substance.
高野、
みんな潔く死んだのに。
違うわ。私を殺すな。眠らさずに殺しなさい。
Oh? Oh. Is whatever this chemical thing has been what's affecting her memories? Is that what the implication there? She's gonna fucking take the brunt of it in the hope she can retain her memories in the next cycle? Still, even though she was surprised, she nodded with a slight smile. Hanya was also surprised to hear that. It would obviously be a terrible way to die.
どういうつもり？楽に死ぬ気がないの？辛いわよ。生きたまま腹を裂かれるの。
忘れないためよ。
Yes. I'm doing this so I'll remember. I'm not going to forget about it.
あなたが私の腹を、それを私はあなたに再び会った時。
何を企んでるよ。でもあなたは他の子たちより1秒でも長生きすればでもそうはさせないわ。
They forced something other than the handkerchief inside of my mouth. It was a gag. With that in, I couldn't close my mouth, leading my saliva to start overflowing. Soon, another van arrived. More mountain dogs came out of it. They'd probably come to get rid of the bodies, to grab the corpses of my friends and stuff them into body bags. After that, they sprayed a bunch of water on the ground to clean up the blood. They asked Takano how many shots she fired and started looking around for the bullets. They were erasing all the evidence. By the time the night was over, there'd be no more proof left. They pulled my hands behind my back and bound them with handcuffs. My ankles were tied up too. They also tied my ankles and wrists together. My body was bent like a shrimp, and I was no longer able to walk. My mouth was covered, so I couldn't even talk. I couldn't move, talk, or express myself in any other way. They'd taken away everything that made me human. Therefore, I wasn't human anymore. I was just a toy named Rika Furude, a toy to give Takano joy. The car started moving. It seemed like we were going back the way we came, but I didn't care anymore. As the time of my death approached, some of my forgotten memories came back to me. That's right. I was killed like this so many times. Every time I repeated my life, Takano got pleasure out of killing me. Somebody rubbed my head. Were they trying to comfort me? No. I shook my head to try and refuse. They laughed at me as I did so.
Tika!
Fuck you. I don't want to hear a goddamn peep out of you. If anything, you should be fucking grateful. You're always talking about like, oh, but in the next time, like, I don't have hope for this one, but the next time. Well, guess what? Now we're prepping for the next time. And that means we're gonna have a little stomach pain. Hanya showed up. She couldn't hold back her devastated tears. When I saw Hanya's painful tears, I was convinced. I was wrong. Hanya's not just a bystander. She's just too scared to face reality because she can't stand the pain anymore. Hanya wants a happy future too, but her hopes were betrayed countless times and she was hurt far too much. For some reason, seeing her sorrowful expression calmed me down. Perhaps Hanya was crying in my place.
いいのよ。ハニュ、私たち精一杯頑張っ、もう一息で。それでも届かない。それにね、なんだか気持ちいいの。
I've never fought this hard in my life. I've never learned so many things. Because I can repeat my life endlessly, I've been taking each one for granted. But everyone else is taking their lives seriously. I wasn't learning anything because I wasn't doing that. But I finally understand. I learned something from this life, and I put all my effort into it. So, I'm sad that I didn't make it, but I feel satisfied just the same. It's a strange kind of satisfaction. I wonder how many of these memories I can keep. I get the sense I'm going to lose my memory of this evening. If that's the case, I will lose my memory of seeing Takano's face. I finally found out that Takano is the mastermind. Am I going to repeat the same world again, not knowing the truth? She killed my friends as if she were merely killing some bugs. I don't want to forget that. No matter how hard my death will be, I need to remember Takano's face.
羽生、私はくじけない。この記憶ががむしゃらに生きていく。6月の狭い日々にしか生きられなくなり、それが私の。僕も忘れません。きっと覚えてて、もしリカが忘れていたら、きっと僕が教え。羽生、あなたはやっぱり冷たい傍観者のふりをしていたのは。僕もみんなと楽しく過ごす未来に生き。
Hanyu started to cry like a baby. She's so stupid. She decided to abandon hope because she didn't want to deal with the sadness that she always felt on this night. But she ended up hurt and devastated anyway. Hanyu, are you happy that the world is ending just like you predicted? I decided not to ask her such an unpleasant question. The car stopped, and 2 men pulled me out of the vehicle. We had returned to the Huride Shrine. There were several men waiting in front of the offertory box. Nearby, there were countless sharp knives laid out on the ground. They're going to cut open my stomach with those tools and pull out my intestines. They took off all of my clothes. They left the gag inside my mouth and the handcuffs around my wrists. I wasn't embarrassed to be naked in front of them. Rather, I was just furious that Takano was getting joy out of doing this to me. Don't forget this humiliation. The pain I'm about to experience should be carved into my soul forever. I'm not going to forget this. Everyone worked together and we finally revealed who was behind it all. If I forget... If I forget this, my friends' efforts and deaths will have been in vain. I need to stay alive as long as I can, so that I'll remember the pain.
羽生、目を背けないで。あなたも見ていなさい。そして心に刻んで。僕にはそのくらいの協力しか触ることも喋ることもできない。それで十分。あなたが目を背けないでいてくれたなら、私も多分痛みに耐えられると思うから。
Hanyu nodded and sat right next to me while continuing to cry. We then looked up at the night sky together. The moon was shining brightly as if it's taking pity upon me. We also looked at the faces of my murderers. That beautiful moon was gradually stained red. It's getting cold. It's so painful. I'm consumed with the fear of not being able to do anything about this. But Hanyu's right next to me. That gives me comfort. It's not just Hanyu either. Oh, god damn it. Fuck. Ah. Ah. God damn it. Oh, son of a bitch. Ah. Everyone is there, watching me, so I can stand this torture. That's why it wasn't painful. I didn't struggle. I didn't care about Takano's crazy laughter. This was such a wonderful world. We didn't overcome this fate, but I have no regrets. Of course, I'm still sad. I'm disappointed. My future was right in front of my eyes. My hand could almost reach it. Even so, we did what we could. I have to be proud of myself. Keiichi voiced his disagreement. He still felt that we could have done more. We were almost there. We almost defeated this fate. We didn't win, but not because our enemies were strong. We didn't win because we didn't try hard enough.
でもみんなは心を一つにして僕は全部見ていましたのです。
いや、運命を打ち破ろうとする意志が全員で結束できていたの。
そうなんだよ。全員が信じたなら必ず奇跡が。さとこもリカちゃまもみんなよく頑張り。ごめんなさいですわリカ。あなたが打ち明ける勇気を見せてくれたのに私はあなたを救えなかったですわ。
Satoko held my shoulder and cried.
そうよ、みんなで力。それでダメならありがとう。本当にありがとう。多分あまたの世界と同じ死を迎えるのに、この死を代償に。私、リカちゃん、違うの。奇跡が起こらなかった理由レナは知ってるよ。
Reina spoke gently, but she wasn't smiling at all.
ねえ、本当にみんな奇跡を起こそうと信じてた？未来を望むとき全員が信じてなかったら奇跡。
何言ってんだよレ。俺たちは結束した。運命を打ち破れることを疑わなかったぞ。なあミオン。
うん、そうだよレナ。誰も運命に勝てない。リカちゃんのこの運命を覆したいと思う。
そうですわ。リカですらそれを。最後の最後にリカは私たちを信じて。もちろんレナも信じたよ。でも信じなかった人がいた。誰がです？
What? Who can it be?
ねえ、あなた。
Debbie Downer? Yep. Yep. Of course it was Miss Debbie Downer. Good. Good. Hit her with that right now as she's forced to watch Rika get fucking disemboweled. Fucking look at her and be like, you see this? It's because you didn't believe. Look at what happened because you didn't have faith in any of us. Look at this. Nah, that was the perfect time to hit her with that. So she's got that as thing. Rika's not gonna get knocked out. They're not gonna lose their memories of this night, hopefully. It's like, that's gonna be burned into her fucking brain that this happened because you didn't fucking believe. All the homies, everyone, the whole fucking village was united in shit. Not necessarily for Rika's, case, but like, Keiichi fucking helped revitalize that feeling, that true feeling of unity, so that even Satoko, the fucking cursed child of the Hojos, felt welcome within the goddamn community. But all along, there was still one motherfucker who kept saying, don't get your hopes up, who kept saying nothing's gonna change. This jackass. Reina turned to Hanyu and asked her a question.
あなた、運命に打ち勝てるって信じててくれた？触れることができなくても信じることはできるんだよ。あなたも信じてくれたならきっと奇跡が起きた。僕が信じて僕は何もできない。僕は見ていること。そんな僕が信じるだけで奇跡が起こせたというのですか？
ああ、起こせたな。
Yeah, everyone guilt tripped the fuck out of this jackass. I love it. Yeah, this is the ending I needed. Even if it's just a very tragic ending. Everyone just ganging up being like, yeah, no, things could have turned out differently if you actually believed in us. Oh, that can't be true. And someone else shows up like, no, they're right. Like, things would have turned out if you would have actually put faith into actually overcoming this fate. Like, oh yeah, no, things would have changed. No, that can't be. Person number 4 enters. Well, actually, no, they're onto something here. Yeah, keep dogpiling her. Let her fucking carry the weight of this guilt. So that in the actual next go around, she fucking knows there's no staying by the sidelines and waiting for the next go around. You put your fucking all into every fucking turn, and even if it falls short, when the next go around comes around, you don't lose faith, you just go that much harder. Because you gotta be determined, you gotta have faith that eventually things will change. You gotta have faith, you gotta believe. Keiichi stated it clearly. He wasn't trying to blame her, he was just stating the truth.
そうだね。あの時、向こうは7人だった。
Oh, damn. That is true. Just like there were 6 mountain dogs that were like engaged in the fight, there was a 7th one like watching from the shadows, right? It's kind of like the same with this group. There were 6 actively engaged in combat, but there was a 7th one watching from the watching on the sideline, see how things played out. Whereas our 7th stood by and had no faith we could do it. Their 7th was like, I'm going to make this shit happen.
あなたが信じてくれてたら、それだけで心は7つだった。だったなら、奇跡はね、触れたり喋ったりで起こすんじゃないんだ。信じる気持ちが起こすんだよ。
Hanyu had realized that this ending wasn't caused by fate. It was because she didn't believe. In other words, this happened because she was so weak as to accept this fate. She started crying again.
名前も知らないあなたにも悲しみや辛さと戦う勇気が必要。あなたも運命と戦う勇気が必要だ。あなたが望んだならみんなが望む世界にきっと行けた。それがあなただけが信じなかっただけでたどり着けなかったなら、それはあなたの責任なの。
It was hard to believe Reina could say something so harsh. No, not really. My queen knows how to spit facts. Her words were piercing Hanyu's heart. Good. 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 Let this be the motivation that gives Hanyu a fucking redemption arc. I'm here for it. Absolutely. Let it happen. I'm like, listen, I've talked nothing but absolute shit on Hanyu for the vast majority of it, right? Like when she first showed up, I was like, she's kind of silly. And then quickly she became just such a fucking depressing downer that really got on my nerves, right? I talked mad shit about Hanyu. But I'm all for her having a redemption arc. I'm all for her coming around, alright? I'm all for it. But that's why we need this moment. We need this moment where people talk what they got to talk. And she got to realize how much of a fucking, like, weight she's been on that's been hindering the fucking progress. But those words were necessary for me and for her. Only faith can create a miracle. That sounds like something you might hear in a fairy tale. It's not easy to put into action. People suspect others. They don't trust others. Yeah, that is like a key core of, like, from what I could tell, from what I've picked up from the story thus far, like a key core of is just having trust, not just in your friends, but just in your fellow man, you know, in the people around you. That's kind of what it's built up to, right? Because, like, that was like a big culmination in this chapter, is like the whole village coming together, and ultimately the whole village finally welcoming Satoko, the Sonozakis finally putting aside their grudges towards Satoko, everyone just finally coming together, and this real sense of, like, trust within the community, right? It's easier to not have hope. It's so difficult to believe. That's why faith can make miracles happen. God damn it, were you not just listening to what Reina said? Open your fucking ears. She already addressed the touching thing. She already addressed that touches don't make miracles. Faith. Faith. Trust. Belief.
喋れないのですよ。そんな僕でも信じれば奇跡が起こったというのですか？
Yes. That's exactly what we just said. What are you, stupid? Reina's over here like, listen, you don't need to touch someone or speak. You don't need to touch or speak to make miracles happen. You just gotta believe. And she's over here like, but I can't touch or speak. You think miracles happen if I believe? Like, that is exactly what we just said. Yes, verbatim, like those are the words we just used.
だって今こうして私はあなたと言葉を交わしたのはいつもあなたがいるのを知っていた。
That is true.
あなたに言葉をどうすればかけられるか考えていたよ。私たちが楽しく遊んでいる時、輪の中に入りたくても僕を見たらみんな化け物。僕はもう二度と化け物と言われたくないのです。
誰が言うよそんなことを。俺たちと一緒にいたなら俺たちは仲間だ。
そうですわよ。仲間のことを化け物呼ばわりなんて失礼しちゃいますわ。化け物かどうかは容姿じゃなくて心で決まるんだよね、シオン。そういうことです。まあその見地から言えば私の方がよっぽど化け物ですよ。
True.
頭に角が生えていても僕は化け物とは呼ばれないのでしょうか。
Ma'am, you have seen some of the shit that Shion has done, and you're over here worried about the fact that you have horns? Jesus Christ. Like hell, even in this chapter alone, Shion was going off about how she was ready to fucking kill someone. That she would have done it at in a moment's notice, without hesitation. And you're over here be like, but I have horns. I'm the real monster. Like, the fuck's wrong with you? You really are a bit fucking slow, ain't you?
身体的特徴で化け物なんて誰も呼ばないよ。むしろキュートなくらいだよ。
レナに気をつけろ。変に気に入られるとお持ち帰りされるぞ。
お持ち帰り? I realized then that I was standing with everyone, looking down at my own body. I see. I'm finally dead. I looked at my bloody body by my feet. It upset me that Takano was still enjoying the torture, but the body that remained was nothing but a shell.
大丈夫かリカちゃん。
死んだ人に大丈夫かとは変な話なのです。
Got a point there. Looking down at your own corpse like, you good, bud? Like, no, I'm kind of fucked up. This is definitely an interesting experience to be having. Everyone smiled wryly. It's my first time feeling so much love and death. Everyone is already dead. That's why I feel so happy to be dead. To join them. Suddenly, the world got darker. And my body started to sink downward. I could feel myself disappearing. I still had the sensation of my friend's hands on mine.
行こうぜみんな。
そうだね。あなたもほら、いつまでも泣いてないで行こう。
My vision had gone dark, but somehow I could still see. Reina offered her hand to Hanyu, and Hanyu slowly took it.
羽生、あなたが私と出会う前にみんなは絶対にあなたを受け入れてくれるわ。僕がいても楽しいでしょうか。僕はみんなに受け入れてもらえるのでしょうか。うん、だからおいで。
Reina touched Hanyu's hand. Felt like everyone else laid their hands on top too. If only they had hands to do so. Let's go, Hanyu. Let's accept this sorrow, so we can embrace joy as well. Believe in the bright future that's waiting for us. The miracle will happen. We will obtain it. Okay? Yes, Hanyu said with a definite nod. What's outside of the well? Is it something worth fighting for? What's outside of the well? Is it something worth getting hurt for? What's outside of the well? I'm going to fight and get hurt in order to find that out. I'm sure what's waiting is a beautiful world, even if I get to the bottom of the well again. The key to the new world is my willingness to get out of here. Even if I can get out or not, I will eventually get to the new world. Holy fuck. God damn. That's the thing, this chapter did such a great job of giving me so much hope, even knowing that there was an 8th chapter. That's something I kept saying like the whole time, right? I was like, damn, things seem to be going so well. I wonder what could possibly be happening in the 8th chapter. It's like, I think it was just because of a lot of Rika's own talk of like, if this cycle doesn't work out, I'm done. So I was just kind of like, I kept going through that chapter with that mentality of like, well, I mean, she's gonna be done. So like, and it genuinely wasn't until like, right in that moment where like time freezes and you see the bullet in front of Keiichi that I actually accepted that, oh, this cycle isn't going to turn out well. Like, oh, there's actually there's going to be another go around. And then obviously then Rika starts talking about like, don't put me under, like, I'll experience it in consciousness. And then you start to understand, oh, she's doing that because she's going to retain her memories so that the next cycle will truly be the final one, which makes sense being the final chapter. Oh, God. Fuck, dude. No, I wasn't ready for the whole scene of them getting fucking gunned down, though. That shit fucking sucked. That shit was truly rough. Because, I mean, that's the thing. We've kind of dealt with I think at least once, all of them have died at some point, right? And some of them have even had fairly violent ends. And even though they were pretty quick and painless ways to go, it was just like, I don't know, the one by one of it. It's essentially being lined up and having to see your friends one by one, bang, bang, bang. Like, just one after the other until the last one left is your best fucking friend. Like, come on, dude. And when I say that scene sucked, I mean as in like it was rough to read, not that it was badly written or anything. It was rough. That shit hit. Emergency Manual 1. Oh. If the existence of a terminal patient L5 is confirmed, the Institute Director must resolve the situation before the L5 begins engaging in antisocial behavior. However, they must ensure that the secret remains hidden. To that end, the Director may also request assistance from the Secrecy Preservation Unit. As for the Secrecy Preservation Unit, they may request permission to fire from the Institute Director if necessary. All efforts should be made to secure the L5 subject as alive, but if that proves obstructive to maintaining secrecy, their life may be forfeit. At all times, maintaining secrecy and preventing exposure will be of the highest priority. However, preserving secrecy will take priority over preventing exposure. Emergency Manual Appendix 9 FAQ. Can Emergency Manual 34, be administered if an outbreak of L5 occurs, putting matters beyond the control of the Secrecy Preservation Unit? Additionally, is the Institute Director responsible for determining what constitutes an out-of-control situation? A. Yes. If an accident occurs and a hazardous material, the H-170 series, is exposed to the public, can Emergency Manual 34 be administered? Yes. If an accident has occurred and the nature of the Institute is revealed to the public, the Secrecy Preservation Unit will take steps to resolve the situation. However, if this information is spread too widely, can Emergency Manual 34 still be administered? Additionally, is the Institute Director responsible for making that decision? Yes. The decision to execute Emergency Manual 34 must be carefully deliberated over and sanctioned by an official. However, in that case of an emergency, does the Institute Director have the right to make the final decision? The execution of Emergency Manual 34 must be sanctioned by an official at all times. However, the Institute Director may petition the urgency of its use to an official. Emergency Manual 34. Reproduction or removal of this document is prohibited. This manual may only be read with the appropriate permissions. This manual will only apply upon approval by the highest authority. Nothing short of official authorization shall count as approval. Furthermore, those authorized to apply this manual must make their decision as soon as possible when it is required. If the situation threatens to spiral out of control and the official accedes that this is the case, The IDEA Institute must make the final decision to preserve the secret and prevent its detection by others. The following is an outline of how to execute that final resolution. Terminate all patients above L2. Yeah, So, IDEA made that call then, right? And is that kind of... Does he actually take his own life because he feels guilt over making that call? Destroy all evidence inside the Institute. Conceal the fact that this manual was administered. The contents of this manual must be executed by the Institute Director within 48 hours of the incident. If the Director is not available, the Chief Officer must execute in his place. Okay. That's probably more likely then. IDEA's death is set up to look like he took his own life, but someone definitely did it so that the next person... And then that's why Tomitake gets taken out, right? Yeah. Because I'm sure Tomitake would actually be the next in line to, do it. And I'm pretty sure Takano would be third in line then. The Institute Director may demand support from the Chief Officer in executing this manual. This manual is expected to be executed. The Chief Officer may issue the preliminary orders. The final resolution must be executed in the following steps. Disguise the incident as a natural gas disaster and quarantine the area. The quarantine unit must disguise themselves as police officers and isolate the Hinamizawa region from the outside world. The official explanation must be that there is a gas disaster within the village. The equipment for the operation will be stored at a vacant lot where Yagauchi Quarry used to be. The equipment must undergo routine maintenance. In the event of external breach or internal escape, if they do not respond to the notice of the gas disaster or orders to evacuate, use of firearms is authorized. The approval to use firearms is given by the Chief of the Secrecy Preservation Unit to the Chief of the Traffic Blockade Unit. Okay. So Akasaka's hunch at the end of the last chapter was right. There was never any gas leak. They just went through and just straight up killed all the fucking people. And the only reason Keiichi lived at the end of chapter 3 was simply because he didn't witness anything. He didn't witness anything and simply accepted what they told him as facts. Shutting down communications. The Communication Sabotage Unit must ensure that all forms of communication, including radio, have been disabled in the Hinamizawa area. They must take care not to fall under suspicion, and communications must be disrupted for a minimum amount of time. The facility belonging to the telephone company is inside of the traffic blockade, so any civilians inside may be shot and killed. The Chief of the Secrecy Preservation Unit may give permission to use lethal force to the Chief of the Communication Sabotage Unit. Assembling the infected carriers. The Secrecy Preservation Unit must assemble the infected populace in the Hinamizawa Regional Disaster Shelter. Refer to the enclosed documents for gathering procedures. Upon assembly, the unit must count the number of the infected and confirm that everyone is present. Be sure not to allow the infected to expose the true nature of the gas disaster. Additionally, the infected must not be allowed to bring any large personal belongings with them. However, they may take their valuables, including bank books and cash. Infected who refuse to assemble may be shot. The Chief of the Secrecy Preservation Unit may carefully consider the decision to do so. Yeah, you're essentially coming through and asking people to evacuate, which we know what happens with that in the village. That's why there are no survivors of the incident. Because no one agreed to evacuate, so they all got gunned. So the entire village essentially gets fucking gunned down. Terminating the infected. Once they are assembled, the Secrecy Preservation Unit must terminate all the infected. Okay. So it's nothing at all like what the suspicion was earlier when like Rika was telling the story of like the Queen Carrier and like the potential of like pheromones taking people out or whatnot. Like, no. It was just completely erratic. The fucking quarantine team sweeps through and just completely fucking takes out everyone in the village. Because the gas leak happened late at night, right? Early in the morning, so no one could detect it. Before that point, care must be taken to ensure that they are not suspicious of the story of the gas disaster. Be sure that they are treated as humanely as possible. If any problems occur, the unit has approval to fire their weapons. The Chief of the Secrecy Preservation Unit must also make that decision. Bodies with gunshot wounds should not be placed together with those that have been poisoned. Concealment of the Institute. The Institute Concealment Unit must collect all the classified items, referred to the 193 items in the appendix, in the Institute in order to suppress the evidence. Refer to the appendix for more detailed instructions. The research staff at the Institute must assist with this operation. This unit must exercise extreme caution as they will be handling a number of toxic substances. Strict quarantine must be maintained of the concealment block. The airproof door must be welded shut and the underground area must be flooded. The entrance to the area must be welded shut and concealed completely. Furthermore, the concealment block will be completely removed within 3 years. The Institute Concealment Unit must eliminate all civilians who would try to approach the Institute. The use of firearms is not permitted except in emergencies. The Chief of the Secrecy Preservation Unit may give the order to fire. Searching the village. The Secrecy Preservation Unit must search the whole village for any survivors. Any person who was not present during the assembly must be found. Any survivors found after the termination of the infected may be shot immediately. However, if the survivor is willing to surrender, do not shoot and instead take them into custody of the Secrecy Preservation Unit. The unit must then terminate the captive using the same method as for the other infected. Post-mission transfer to General Forces. Transfer the job to the official disaster recovery team. Make sure not to arouse suspicion. Complete withdrawal. After the completion of all operations, the Secrecy Protection Unit will retreat from the Hinamizawa area. They must be careful not to be suspected by the disaster recovery team. Furthermore, the Institute will continue to secure the concealment block until complete removal is finished. The Queen and her carriers. It is assumed that the pathogen has the same characteristics as creatures such as ants. There's a queen of the carriers of the disease, just like there's a queen ant, and this position has been passed down the line to the Huraday family. This assumption is made based on the legends and ancient writings that have been passed down in the village. It is already confirmed that the carriers have a tendency to protect their queen. Additionally, the queen carrier can only survive within the boundary of the village. Probability of outbreak. As ordinary patients will become ill when they travel far away from the queen, it is assumed that the further and longer they are away from her, the higher the chances of symptoms occurring becomes. Also, mental state plays a strong factor as well, and it's estimated that those who are especially emotionally unstable or show strong yearning for their home are more likely to exhibit symptoms. It is believed that the Takano relaxation method is the most effective means of suppressing symptoms, but if the patient still shows no improvement, only returning them to their home and the queen will be effective. Concerning terminal patients. Terminal patients, as they suffer from an extreme persecution complex, are incapable of functioning within society. Cases of arson and murder have been confirmed. They may present severe problems for their units. Records show that terminal patients appear even in Hinamizawa, and they will not recover even if relocated near the queen. Therefore, the decision to dispose of the problem must be made as soon as possible. It is recommended that the infected be quarantined before they start behaving irregularly. It was just tracking down those formerly from Hinamizawa and placing them under special medical observation. The collapse of the carrier community. For the aforementioned reasons, we predict that should the queen carrier die, infected villagers will exhibit terminal symptoms on a village-wide scale. Terminal symptoms will begin showing within 24 hours at the earliest and 48 at the latest. For that reason, the final decision must be made within 48 hours. Based on the size of the village, neither ordinary officers nor the police may be able to control the chaos they may bring. We believe the best response is to treat them as an armed anti-national uprising and immediately suppress them with the military. January 1945. To Colonel Koizumi of the Supreme Council for the Direction of War. From Hifumi Takano. Okay, that's what the T stood for. Okay. June 23rd, 1983. Document E420 for the 58th Defense Commissioner. And TCOM 733 Commander. TCOM 733 is hereby ordered to be on standby within 24 hours, armed for urban suppression. The company commander must also thoroughly study Emergency Manual 34. Select personnel carefully with the preservation of secrecy in mind. Additionally, test the effectiveness of the vaccine with the support of the National Research Center of Infectious Diseases. Employ those with positive immunity. June 23rd, 1983. Document E711 for the 58th Director of the NIHS. Attention Equipment Testing Company Commander 733. The National Research Center of Infectious Diseases. Infectious Pathogen Department, Suite 13. Official seal omitted. About the Hinamizawa Syndrome. This is information regarding the Hinamizawa Syndrome. The Hinamizawa Syndrome is an infectious disease caused by a virus. There are no initial symptoms. Instead, their onset begins when the patient's emotional state becomes unstable or if the queen carrier dies. The main symptoms of the illness are hallucinations and emotional instability paired with an extreme persecution complex. Furthermore, patients are frequently unaware of their own mental abnormalities, making identification outside examination nearly impossible. The only way to do so is by observing symptoms indicative of terminal abnormal behavior. In many cases, patients engage in antisocial behavior, which is the largest issue created by the syndrome. This behavior is caused by the hormonal factors, as this disease mainly affects the mind as opposed to the body. In the end, the patients will experience extreme irritation in their lymph nodes and they will claw at their throats or wrists. This is the only symptom that is recognized by the patient. Important points regarding the sterilization operation. This is an advisory notice for virus control. The pathogen is an airborne infectious virus. Therefore, no effective preventative methods exist and inoculation is required. After the mission is completed, all staff members must take a medical exam and those with positive test results must come forward. Be cautious when interacting with the carriers, villagers. Even after inoculation, any contact with their bodily fluids will cause infection. Do not come into direct contact with them. If assumed infected, individuals must use the testing syringe and test themselves for the disease. If you feel an extreme irritation in your lymph nodes, it's likely you have terminal symptoms. In that case, you must get tested immediately. If test results comes out positive, inject the treatment medication C120. If the irritation persists after 10 minutes, use a second injection. If there is still no change in symptoms, seek treatment at HQ. Do not use C120 if your test results are not positive. If used on a healthy body, symptoms of high fever, rashes, dilated pupils, and hallucination will be observable within 10 minutes. If this occurs, one must seek treatment at HQ. Government officials explain the entire situation in a luxurious meeting room adorned with a marble table and crystal ashtrays. The chief cabinet secretary was in a panic. He'd never heard about any of this before. Feelings of panic were only natural. One girl's death was going to drive 2,000 villagers into a frenzy. Hearing that a disease like that exists was surprising enough. But on top of that, it was secretly researched for military use, and now there was a horrific situation caused by the director of the local research institute engaging in embezzlement.
そんな危険な病気、本当に治療の手段は。はい、国立研究所の説明では、重度感染者の発症に対する治療法は確立したばかりで、最短で24時間以内、長くとも48時間以内に甚大な被害と影響が予想されます。
The danger of this Hinamizawa syndrome was explained over and over again to the chief secretary. He didn't have anything more to say, but that didn't mean that he could blindly accept it either. He simply couldn't believe that the only way to resolve the situation was to kill all 2,000 infected villagers.
そりゃ大変なことになるのはわかるけど、そもそもなんでこんな危険な病気を隠蔽して、そもそもそういう事態を招いたのはその関係の連中の責任じゃないのかね。第一、こんな危険な研究は今や日本の国益に貢献しないどころか、どうして昭和の58年までこんな。報告書によれば、研究目的のために撲滅を意図的に遅らせていたそうじゃないか。しかも汚職をめぐるトラブルの果てに、これはテロだよ、テロ。東京の老害だ。こんな研究を指示していた人間、いつまでも大戦の亡霊に取りつかれている連中を、これは東京の海を出すいい機会じゃないのかね。
責任者の追及は必ず行いますが、それより前に対応を考えなければなりません。
A man standing by the window slowly turned around and opened his mouth.
総理、ご決断。
滅菌作戦を承認しない。
はい、今から36時間後には村人のほぼ全員が末期発症、末期的な被害妄想に取りつかれ、反社会的な行為を行います。想定されるのは自殺、殺人、治安の完全なる崩壊で、騒動はおそらくひなみ沢地区結果、世界規模での注目を浴びることになるでしょう。民間の独自調査の結果、野党は奇病の対応の不手際を清掃の具に、また東京内でも総理の対応に批判が高まるでしょう。彼らの指示は総理の列島改造に欠かせません。そして何よりも軍事目的での研究が政府内部から暴かれる可能性があり、これだけは断固阻止しなくては。
逆に滅菌作戦を承認した場合はどうなる。
はい、自然災害を装いますので、やはり対応の不手際の野党。ただし奇病研究について発覚することはないでしょう。もし万が一奇病の軍事的研究が世界に発覚したら、他国の援助を受ける政党は売国どもめ。そうなれば野党の政権奪取は必至だよ。日本は宣戦布告なくしてシミュレートの結果では、第2党第3党が連立した場合、与野党の勢力は完全に反転します。 国際世論は我が国を一斉に非難。国連に対し NBC 兵器開発疑惑の査察を要求するでしょう。近隣国は政府主導でバッシングキャンペーンを展開。高支持率を背景に対日外交を強硬路線に転換します。我が国は政治的焦土と化すでしょう。
国際信用はクソ。つまりひなみ沢地区と周辺自治体の数十万人だけの問題では済まんということ。しかし全てを闇に葬るための犠牲が2000人とは多すぎる。
日本国内において生物兵器研究が行われていたことが露呈することだけは、私はどうやら大戦の亡霊の尻を吹く羽目になりそうですね。
滅菌作戦は計画通りに。滅菌作戦が発覚すれば奇病研究以上の大スキャンダルになるぞ。
はい、ご安心。それにつきましては、このような事態を想定し、万一の失敗はありえません。
都市沈黙戦という言葉は初めて聞きましたが、自衛隊にガス栓を習熟した部隊があったとは。
ガス防護を知るにはガス栓を知らなければなりません。ガス虐殺に備えるにはガス虐殺を知らねばなりません。装備実験隊は日本国が受ける可能性のある全ての攻撃に対し日夜研究を重ねています。
He let out a small sigh. He couldn't see the line between ethical and unethical. Can any research be justified by the excuse of preparing against hostilities? That's also what preparation was all about. Some evils must be accepted as necessary. The Idia Institute was one such evil.
明かせぬ研究を葬るために明かせぬ方法を取るか。
罪悪感の伴う任務だが、隊員から事実が漏れ出すことはな。
ありえません。隊員は第一空挺から精鋭を選抜し、実戦はこれが初めてになりますが、連度は極めて高く、内部の機密保持も問題ありません。
まさに暗殺の専門部隊ですね。
総理、どうか緊急マニュアル第34号の
防衛庁長官、この作戦は必ず成功しますか。事件が大騒ぎになる前にいえ、犠牲者を。
はい、総理。すでに予備命令を発し、作戦準備に入っご決裁がいただければ。
私には人口2000人を虐殺する命令ですが、内閣総理大臣として。
総理、
どうか犠牲者が一番少なくて済む2000人がどうしても治療できないなら。
はい、ご決裁を感謝いた。必ずや朗報をお持ちいたします。
2000人の犠牲が朗報と呼べるならですがね。奥野君、東京の皆さんに近日中に今回の件について釈明を直接聞かせていただきたい。
わかりました。
ところで、その問題の研究所長の。
いえ、服毒自殺とのこと。研究の終了が自身の人生を否定されたものと悲観しての発作的行動と思われていますが。
Nah, that's a setup.
彼を凶器に駆り立てた理由は永遠に闇の中ということですか。
The execution of Emergency Manual 34 is approved. June 23rd, 1983. The Prime Minister.
皆さん、輸送の都合で荷物を持つことはできません。手荷物は禁じます。繰り返します。現金通帳印鑑の類だ。混乱防止のため車両避難は禁じています。
It was the middle of the night, and yet countless villagers were out and about. Some of them were locking their doors, some of them were watering their plants, some of them were piling up food in their dogs' dinner bowls. Small children were crying in fear. Members of the town council were yelling angrily while counting up the villagers. Reportedly, the village had been cut off from the rest of the world after volcanic gas gushed out of the mountains. The number of policemen and military units in the village added to the strong smell of sulfur in the air, dispelled any doubts the villagers might have had. The more religious among the elderly were convinced that this was the curse of Rika Huride, who had passed away the day before. They were certain that Ayashiro-sama was enraged, and that the door to hell had been opened. Soldiers wearing gas masks guided the villagers to the evacuation center.
皆さんが避難した後の家屋を守るためです。また、災害に便乗して商店を襲撃。
南沢にそんな輩はおらんのじゃ。
第一小隊、避難誘導順調。了解。一個分隊を応援に。
兵隊さん。
位牌は構いません。急いでください。紹介の方は天候を、歩行困難な方は申し、隊員が補助します。
お社様、お社様、お社様。 防災訓練通りに班長は点呼終わったら懲戒役員に連絡せんかいね。
鬼ヶ淵から正気、お社様は
こんなに大勢いるんじゃ村で死なせてく。
大丈夫で輸送ヘリとボーナス仕様のバスが回されます。
Oh, Jesus. Did they fucking just round up everyone in one fucking spot so that would be easier to fucking kill them all off?
必ず助かりますから。
みんな営林署へや。4丁目は違うだろう。郵便局裏の公民館だぞ。
Yeah, everyone gather at the forestry service, and guess what? At the end of chapter 3, when we see, Keiichi climbing back up out of the valley, the first place he walks by is the school, which is the forestry service, and that's where he sees fucking bodies piled up.
皆さん、防災訓練落ち着いて災害時避難場所団体行動をお願いします。
Yup, they all get sent to these evacuation points, and that's just makes it easier for them to take them all out at once. Instead of worrying about, someone potentially, going astray.
一人の乱れがどうか団体行動を家には必ず戻れます。
Villagers couldn't see the expressions under the soldiers' gas masks. They wondered what kind of expressions they were hiding under there. The soldiers were, of course, lying to the villagers, knowing that they would never return to their homes again. One such trooper cried under his mask, but the villagers never saw his tears.
引き返してくだ。車両での避難は禁止され、この先はガス流で寸断されており、あんたにも硫黄の匂いがわかるでしょう。
Some people tried to leave in their cars so as to take large items with them. However, the quarantine unit had sealed off all roads leading outside. The gas masks of the troopers and the smell of the sulfur persuaded them to return and obey their instructions. Some of them tried to contact Okonomiya, but their phones would not connect. The lines were busy no matter how much they tried. They simply assumed that the phone lines were overwhelmed because of the disaster. Some of the villagers had access to radios. They tried to figure out what the situation was like outside, but all they could hear over the radio was loud static. It was the same with the television. They couldn't contact anyone outside of the village, so they really were totally isolated. And so they had nothing to rely on but the instructions of the police and the military. They were all like moths heading towards a light, never doubting that they would be safe there. One old war veteran listened to the noise from the radio and muttered, As it turned out, he was absolutely correct. However, he turned off the radio when his son urged him to evacuate. The villagers had all gathered at their evacuation points. Some of them were at the school, some were at the community center. They were to stay in the building until the evacuation vehicles arrived. The soldiers told them to stay inside so they could keep track of the number of evacuees.
万一のガス流に備えて窓はすべて閉めてください。
Please keep all windows and doors closed to make sure the gas doesn't get in. Meanwhile, they're gonna fucking pump gas into the fucking building. Okay.
念のため窓ガラスはテープで目張りします。申し訳ございませんがご協力をお願い。
よし、若いのは率先して手伝え。
And of course, the village is like banding together, like, yeah, we'll work together, of course. You got it. We trust you, military official. Come on, guys. Let's show them we can work together. Let's show them our fucking sense of unity and cooperation. Jesus fuck. They completely sealed every opening, even as they heard the disquieting conversation of the soldiers. It was long past 3 a.m., but everyone was wide awake with fear. They're having an extremely long night. Coincidentally, the end of their night had almost arrived.
お社様、リカちゃん、お社様、
やっぱりフルデ神社の鬼隠しは
あの日、フルデ神社は鬼の国にのみ、リカちゃまは鬼たちに腹渡を食らわれたんじゃ。
They all started saying that the gas disaster was caused by the curse of Yashiro-sama. Enrica's death and the mysterious disappearance of her friends and the two detectives were also the result of the curse. People started talking about being demoned away. They had no idea that Keiichi and his friend's short battle sealed their fate for that night. The more religious villagers had become convinced that the children and the detectives went missing. Because they volunteered to become a sacrifice to calm Yashiro-sama's anger after Rika's death. They didn't know the truth. They couldn't know. Not one realized that Keiichi and his friend's efforts had all been in vain. Indeed, in Inamizawa, everything that happens is the will of Yashiro-sama. But Why did it have to be that way? Before the series of mysterious deaths occurred, no one really used the term the curse of Yashiro-sama that frequently. In other words, who set them up? People in this village were set up to believe that the curse of Yashiro-sama happens every year. They really are just too superstitious.
サンサ、全小隊が点呼を終了しました。遅れていた自主避難者も全員揃いました。
そう、いよいよね。お社様のたたりが現実となる。お社様の生まれ変わりであるフルデリカを綿流しにする。それで、この5年間の連続したたたりは、もう誰にも事件なんて呼ばせない。これは、荒ぶる神の怒りな。始めなさい。
中隊長より全彼らのために1分間の黙祷を捧げよう。サンサ、1分だけご許可を。
お好きになさい。
Takano gave him a disparaging laugh. The company commander crossed his heart and began to speak.
天に召します我罪なき彼らをどう彼らの尊き犠牲が、そして願わくば我らが今日ここにあることをお許しください。
The company commander isn't Christian. In fact, he doesn't follow any religion. However, he prayed because he felt the need to ask someone for forgiveness. He wasn't even sure if he was saying it correctly, but he still prayed to God. He asked forgiveness for committing his sin and continued to pray. Takano speaking in a soft voice. She was talking to herself.
神がいつ降臨されるのか、それは例えるなら、泥棒がいつ訪れるのかわからない。だから予期せずしてその時を迎えて、エセ預言者たちは、神の降臨を声高に叫ぶであろうが、それに惑わされてはなりません。か。
One man heard the murmurs.
マタイの福音。
そうなの。祖父の好きだったこと。報われる日がいつ訪れるかわからないから。
今日が報われる日なのですか？
そうよ。あなたにはわからないでしょうけど。
失礼ながら、主の降臨はこのような日にそれを例えられることは冒涜かと思います。
He was trying to tell her that using that verse of the Bible was inappropriate for the occasion. However, Takano simply laughed as though she had heard something very funny.
ごめんなさい。あなたは神に試さ。私は今日を境に試す側となる。
以上で黙祷を終了する。
And with the end of the silence,
全小隊
the order was given in as hollow and reluctant a manner as an order can possibly be.
今こそ私の理想はすべて完成した。文字通りの理想郷がここにはある。ここでは私は神で、私のたたりは永遠に刻まれ、語り継がれるのだ。
People were packed into the classroom. They were afraid. The troopers closed the door of the classroom. The people inside had no idea why they were doing that. However, they didn't suspect anything at all. One old man walked up to the door to open it. Because with it closed, it was far too hot inside the room. But he collapsed all of a sudden. His wife tried to walk over to help him up, but she also collapsed all of a sudden. Then, other people also started collapsing inside of the room. It really was a very odd sight. What would make for a good example? It would be pretty amusing if they were dominoes. However, they're human beings. People sitting by the window watched this strange event happen before their eyes. They opened those eyes wider to try and understand what was going on.
ダム戦争をきっかけに長き眠りからよみがえった荒ぶる神が不信心なる者を綿流しの聖夜の旅にたたりを下してゆく。その一年一年の積み重ねが神の復活、お社様の意向の復活、たたりを恐れるという原始的恐怖への回帰。
The door creaked open slightly, and someone on the other side threw 3 spray canisters into the room. More people started to collapse, even those at the window. This wasn't something that was happening only in one room. It was happening in all the other rooms, too. It was happening in all the evacuation centers. People's dreams, their hopes, and their futures were taken away so quickly and easily.
そして誰もがお社様のたたりを疑わなくなり、 完全に復活した我は古きムクロの腹を内より破りて今こそこの世によみがえる。お社様の怒りに触れるとき、地獄の釜が開きて正気があふれ出し、人々は逃げることもかなわずことごとく生き絶えるなり、その最後の審判がたたりがこうして実現した。
There was a commotion in the reception room by the principal's office. Someone had figured out what was going on, broke the seal off the window, and escaped outside. Other people tried to remove the seal on their windows too, but they collapsed in a matter of seconds.
あなたは死んだら何が残る？身は腐り、焼かれ、骨は砕かれ砂になる。大地の肥やしになる以上の何が残せるの？
応接室で脱走発生。4名が窓から発砲許可。撃て撃て撃て撃て撃て撃て。
Jesus fucking Christ. He said 4 people escaped. That was so many bullets. The soldiers shot the people who tried to escape in the back. The sound of the gunshots echoed in the silence. It was a noise filled with cruelty. They helplessly fell down to the ground. Their deaths were so pitiful compared to the silent deaths of those before them. The residential police officer was one of the escapees. He tried to shoot back at them with his own gun. His shots could be heard throughout the building. The soldiers ducked into the shadows upon hearing the noise. The officer seized his chance and ran towards the gate. But that was just a waste of time. Not only is the range of the automatic weapons they were using longer than the length of the schoolyard, but as trained professionals, it would be nothing for them to shoot him from that distance. The villagers had no choice. Either they'd die from the gas without realizing what was happening, or they'd find out about the mission and be killed.
どうした？反撃されたか？応答しろ！
脱走者は全員、銃声は駐在警官が。
射殺隊を回収し、一般犠牲者と一緒にしないよう注意せよ。
The soldiers walked over to the 4 fallen bodies. They needed to make sure they were all dead, not just injured.
私は残した。名を残した。異形を残した。たたりを残した。私の存在はこの長く封鎖されるこの土地で神格化されるだろう。そして近隣の町にて今日のたたりを逃れた者たちはたたりを恐れ、その恐怖を人々に語り継ぐだろう。人間の群れの記憶が私を超越した存在へ昇華させるのだ。
第一小隊より本部、営林署の滅菌を終了。脱走者4名は射殺。
第2小隊より本部、滅菌終了。脱走者なし。第3小隊より脱走者10名、現在相当中。制圧は時間。第4小隊より滅菌終了。脱走者なし。第3小隊より脱走者13名、全員の滅菌を終了。了解。機密保持部隊の全小隊は確認を厳重に行われたし。
Takano was laughing to herself inside of the van. She didn't physically see all those people dying silently, but she saw it anyway. She saw countless people dying without even noticing it. She saw it all in her mind. Jesus, how long are you going for? Takano waved her arms in the air. No one was watching her, but no one would understand what she was doing even if they were. She was waving her baton. Takano was pretending that she was the conductor of this silent funeral march.
滅菌の完全終了を確認。通信妨害を終了しますが。
いいわよ。
施設処理部隊より機密搬出と溶接封鎖を完了。現在注水中。
交通封鎖部隊より封鎖線は異常なし。
通信工作部隊より通信妨害を終了。電話施設の現状復帰を開始。
Takano was paying no attention to these reports. She continued to sing the melody of an orchestra. One operator spoke to her.
ご機嫌ですね。
最高に気分がいい。あなたには聞こえない。この新しい神を称える賛歌が。
賛歌。
Takano laughed loudly, spreading her arms wide.
たたえる神のいなかったこの地に、このひなみ沢にはお社様という名が残るだけ、神がかつて存在した痕跡が残るだけのその地に、私は再び神をどういうことかわからないでしょうね。今の世界にたたる神が何人いる？人が試すことに一人もいやしな。それを私がたたった。
Takano laughed as if she was the only one who could comprehend what she was saying. None of the operators inside the car could comprehend her laughter. Takano was satisfied to know that.
たたりなきは神にあらず、たたるゆえに恐れられ、恐れられるゆえに崇められる。それこそが神の真実。神が信仰を生み出すのではなく、信仰が神を生み出すのなら、でも太古の神々はたたったのよ。ではそれこそが真の神の、たたらない神など人間に見下された神でしかない。神の宿らぬ抜け殻のと、これは天の啓示だと。ダム戦争が終わるまで、明治から100年にもそれを私が蘇らせろという神の、そして天は私にありとあらゆる天が与えたわずかの偶然が積もり、芽生えたたたりの芽を私が育てた。育まれたたたりは、そうよ、わかる？つまりは今宵は収穫祭。お社様の伝説に刻まれたこの日が訪れたからこそ、あなたたちは今はわからなくても、私が成した偉業がどれほどのものか、どれだけ長く語り継ぐ。神はたたる。そのたたりを私は起こす。今こそ我はお社様の、我をあがめよ。我が紡ぐはたたり、我が紡ぐは歴史なり。歴史はたたりを語り、我が存在を永劫に語り伝えるであろう。我こそはたたりなり。今こそ我は永遠を得たり。我が身を呪えよ人間たち。そして我こそはお社様なり。今こそ我は肉体が滅びようとも永遠にこの地で語り継がれるのだ。我はお社様。我こそはお社様のたたり。我をあがめよ。たたえよ。そして恐れよ。我が紡ぐはたたりにあらず、死にあらず。我が紡ぐは歴史なり。歴史はたたりを語り、我が存在を永劫に語り伝えるであろう。我こそはたたりなり。肉でできた身を超越せし者なり。この身がたとえ朽ち果てようとも、我が紡ぎし歴史は永遠に残り続けるであろう。今こそ我は永遠を得たり。我が身を呪えよ人間たち。身が朽ちれば後には何も残せぬ無力さを呪い悔やみ恐れるがいい。そして我が偉大さを知るがいい。我こそはお社様なり。今こそ神の領域に至ったものなり。我は肉体が滅びようとも永遠にこの地で語り継がれて永遠の生を受けるのだ。
Huh. Huh. I'ma be honest, I don't know what to do with that information. This fragment's end, huh? Yep, tips reading room. Staff room. Okay. Huh. That that was quite the ending. Huh. I'm very curious to see Takano's backstory explored more. I do know that's something that happens in the last chapter. That's something I was aware of. Because, huh. Like, okay, Takano being behind it all, sure. But, like, her motivations are very interesting. She did it to leave behind a legacy that would last for lifetimes. Like, huh. Why are you that way, ma'am? Huh. So, like, God, I don't know. It doesn't seem like there was any call from on high to, like, put an end to it. Like, we know the people in Tokyo wanted the research shut down, but it seems like Takano purposefully does what she does to Rika so that she has an excuse to do what she does to the rest of the villagers. And it feels like she kind of implicates that she's involved in the killings, the Watanagashi deaths, the series of mysterious deaths, that's what they call it. That seems to be kind of what she implies there. We know that the very first, well, no, the first death was caused by an L5 patient, right? The very first death was caused by an L5 patient. But then did Takano and her fucking gang so I guess like the whole curse thing. So I'm guessing that is the thing. Takano's like love for the occult is genuine, right? It's not just a front or anything to explain like why she's there and so interested and whatnot. I'm assuming her love for the occult is something genuine. And like so with the first death, which happened to be like she said a coincidence, right? The fact that it happened on the evening of Watanagashi, which revived this belief in Oyashiro-sama, right? She then sees that as her own opportunity to cement her own occult legacy. She cares not that her name's attached to it. I mean, she kind of does because she was one of the final victims, right? But I feel like she doesn't care to have her name attached to it just to know that she made this happen. This curse that'll live on in infamy. She made it happen. She's the one that made it happen, and that's why she then therefore refers to herself as the god that made it happen. And that's the thing, they kept framing the people who died on the night of Watanagashi as like people who defied the village, right? People who were against the village, and then just became people who were outsiders and whatnot. And it just kind of boiled down to essentially people that were convenient for Takano to get rid of. Right? She could claim that they were some kind of security risk, right? something that could potentially tamper with the research, but her goals never lied in the actual research, right? She actively participated in the research so that way she could have better control over the people with the syndrome, but she never gave a fuck one way or another about the research or about Tokyo's goals. She just wanted to create this moment, right? Interesting. Interesting. And then so the Sonozaki kept like, not denying responsibility, but also whenever these incidents brought up, simply so that it wouldn't throw the village into an uproar, right? It is all about maintaining the peace. They were willing to, look like the bad guys if it meant the village stayed peaceful, right? If they just said, well, it's the Sonozaki family took care of them, right? Because that's something Mion told us very early on, is that the Sonozakis just happen to take responsibility, that they're very, very rarely ever responsible for the things that happened. And I think Rika confirmed that to us as well. Like, even with the kidnapping of the Ministers of Defense's son way back in the day, that was never the Sonozakis. That was still the work of the Mountain Dogs. Hmm. Hmm. Damn. So all the deaths were linked in some way. And technically, it was the fault of the curse of Yashiro-sama. But, God, that was genuinely something... I mean, I guess something you potentially could have predicted, but... that's something I never would have predicted. Is that she had government ties and was using those government ties to carry out the curse and make it happen. Hmm. And that's why it never happens in chapter 2 and 5, because Rika's whereabouts are never confirmed. Rika's whereabouts are never confirmed, so therefore they can never put the plan into action. That's entirely why. Shion kills Rika, or in chapter 2, Shion kills Rika. In chapter 5, Rika takes her own life. Regardless, her corpse gets dumped in the bottom of that fucking pit. And yeah, the whereabouts are never... since Rika's whereabouts are never, like, known, the plan is never put into effect. That's why we never hear about the disaster in those chapters. And the disaster probably does happen in chapter 1, we just never saw it happen because Keiichi died before Takano's plans were carried out, right? Interesting. Interesting. Because Rika is like the key, right? The villagers need to discover that she's dead, so it throws them all into a panic. If she just up and disappears, then there's something else at play, and it's not what she wants, right? It's not what Takano wants to cement her legacy. So if anything, the person who threw off Takano's plans the most was, coincidentally enough, was Shion. The one we bashed the most, sure, but also the one who actually made the best efforts in foiling Takano's plans. That's wild. That's wild. Very curious to see, because obviously the next one's the final chapter, so hopefully that is where we get the actual miracle run, but I suppose we'll see. For now, we got some tips and a staff room to look at. Let's look at the tips first. This fragment's end. Hit me with it. I guess Rika finally managed to assemble all the pieces to her puzzle. But we don't know yet if her memories will pass on to her in the next life. Rika always loses the memory of her death. I don't know if she can retain the memories of what she's discovered. What did you think? Did you have fun? Fun's an interesting word. Once you find out the answers, collecting them isn't so fun anymore. Not necessarily. You don't agree? No. Damn. Whoa. How'd you predict that? Fuck you. I see. You still might find something different by examining some old fragments. True. After all, the time we have here is endless. We have to find something to play with, because there's nothing to do here. For me, playing with these fragments stops being fun when I find out what's inside. But if you can tell me how to have fun with them, even so, it makes you pretty smart. What? You want to know what I play with? I don't play. I'm just killing time. I like to imagine what Rika could have done in order to achieve the future she hopes for. I like to imagine a world that would have been happy for all of them. You found out how these worlds are set up by looking at the previous ones, right? I like to analyze what would need to change in order for Rika to win against Takano. That's a tough one. Because you need to foil her plan somehow, right? How do you do that? Obviously, Rika can only go back so far. She's not going to be able to stop anything from the previous years. We got to focus on the summer of 83, June of 83, right? So what could you change there? I really feel like the only thing you could potentially do, like the earliest thing anyway you could potentially do, is try to cast a shadow of doubt into Tometake about Takano, right? Tometake's been seduced by her, so he doesn't know, he can't look past what's going on with her and whatnot. But if you can somehow cast that shadow of doubt into him, he may have a better chance of survival. Like, obviously, even if he was doubtful of Takano in that situation where he's like ganged up by the mountain dogs in the basement of the center in the institute, nothing was going to change there. That's the thing. Or you may think of like, go to Oishi, go to the Sonozakis, but it's like without any definitive proof of what they might be doing. Like, if you go to Oishi and be like, hey, just straight up say Takano's behind the murders. I mean, technically you could be onto something. Like, if there's anyone who's gonna do it, it's gonna be Oishi. Be like, no, trust me. Lock up Takano for a night. And watch the murder won't happen. The curse won't happen. You could potentially do that. Because then Tometake doesn't die without Takano's involvement. There is something to that. There is something to that. But if we're unable to avoid... Well, no, that's the thing. We can't. See, that's the thing. I should have realized the run was fucked right then and there. They explicitly told us at the beginning of Chapter 7 that Tometake's fate and Takano's, but like obviously we know Takano's kind of a, you know, she technically dies, but does she die? But like Tometake's fate and Rika's are like essentially tied together. If he dies, that is the signifier that the run is fucked, right? So I feel like that is the one thing you have to change, no matter what, right? Obviously, you need to make sure like all your friends are able to push past their ordeals, right? That Reina overcomes the situation with her father and Rina, that Keiichi is able to feel welcomed in the village and doesn't feel like he's an outsider, that Satoko is able to find her courage to, you know, seek help from her uncle and whatnot, that Shion is able to, you know, overcome, you know, her hostility and whatnot, and, you know, actually carry out Satoshi's last wish and whatnot. You need to ensure that your friends overcome their issues so that they don't succumb to the syndrome and become L5 patients. But then all in the same time, you need to be convincing, you need to somehow create a wedge, create a divide between Tomitake and Takano. That's where the real challenge lies, right? We know what Takano can do now. We know exactly what she does. How do you create that rift? How do you separate the two? Or even if you can't, build a sense of distrust to separate them, how would you do it? How would you separate the two? And see, that's where I see like bringing Oishi into the equation could help, right? If you say, Oishi, I'm suspicious of this person, on the night of Watanagashi, keep a close eye on them, do not let them out of your sight. Right? Then, there's something to that. Because that is the thing, right? When Rika goes to Oishi the night of Watanagashi in this chapter, she essentially says, I'm worried about Tomitake and Takano. I heard someone say that I heard rumors that they were going to be murdered. Right? But if you go and say, I'm worried for Tomitake's safety, I'm suspicious of Takano, like, maybe things play out differently. I don't know what Oishi may be able to do, but maybe Oishi does something. But also, maybe he can't do something. Maybe there's nothing he can do, because we've already seen him get taken out by the hit squad already. And I'm sure Takano has the hit squad, like, on call if she needs it. So there's only so much even Oishi could accomplish. So I think, really, the only course of action is to somehow drive that wedge between Tomitake and Takano. To build that sense of distrust in Tomitake, to where he's actually able to... He doesn't let his guard down around Takano. That he doesn't blindly follow Takano wherever she wants him to go, right? Which that in itself is a large mountain to climb. That's quite the lofty goal to achieve, right? But as far as my mind's eye can see, that's really the only shot we got. Because Takano herself is pretty much untouchable with those fucking mountain dogs with her, right? We already know that Oishi and his subordinates aren't going to be able to do shit. The hit squad will take him out. I have no doubt that if the Sonozakis tried to step in, right, the Yakuza, even with their Yakuza connections, that the hit squad would still protect Takano. Because otherwise, because then the only way that you could possibly, rebel against Takano essentially is to somehow keep Rika alive in the wake of Tomitake's death. But that in itself, I mean, she essentially had all the cards in her hand and still it was fumbled, right? I don't know what more you could do about it in the wake of Tomitake's death. Or I don't see it myself, what the move might have been. I mean, maybe preparing better beforehand, right? If she knows the mountain dogs are... If she's able to retain that information, right? For one, she then would not go to Takano and be like, give me more security from the mountain dogs. She definitely would not do that. She would not constantly be like, hey, you're gonna die. You're gonna die. You're gonna die. She would definitely keep that shit to herself. But maybe, you know, when she gets that impending sense, right, that she's going to die, maybe she goes to school, right? She goes to school with the homies, right? They're not going to attack her in broad daylight. But then she goes home with Mion, right? And like they said, the basement would be a safe point. No one would be able to just storm the Sonozaki estate. Right? People would put up a fight there. And essentially, Urika would have to be kept safe at the Sonozaki estate for a while, to the point where Takano wouldn't be able to carry out, this as an act of Watanagashi, right? Because even though this happens a few days after the actual night of Watanagashi, it's still within that range to where people kind of, let's say it's after, the curse takes place, and then Rika's taken. It seems like Oyashiro-sama was angered, right? But that's the thing, if they wait long enough to the point where her death is too far past what anyone would believe is connected to the curse, right, it really throws off Takano's goals, right, to establish this curse that lives on in infamy, because she's not going to be able to say that the entire village got wiped out. Which is, because yeah, that is essentially what happens in chapters 2 and 5. Obviously, Rika dies in those chapters, but she goes to the Sonozaki estate, right? And she's brought to the basement. And she's kept there, and they don't storm the gates. Oh, that is the play. Getting Rika to the Sonozaki estate seems to be the big play, right? That seems to be the play. If you can't drive the wedge of distrust between Tomitake and Takano, right? If you can't separate those two, if you can't, make Tomitake more cautious to being around Takano, the move seems to be get Rika to the Sonozaki estate. Give her shelter at the Sonozaki estate. And then the mountain dogs are not going to storm the Sonozaki estate. Especially if, like, Mion goes to her grandmother, like, hey, there's rumors that people are trying to, attack, potentially kill Rika. We need to keep her safe. Then, like, I'm sure the Sonozaki family would post up some extra security in that case as well. So then, like, what the hell are the mountain dogs going to do, right? Because they want to attack at night. They're not, that's what we've seen. They won't attack in broad day. They wait till night. Interesting. And that's the thing, we know damn well, like, you could get Kasai down there, right? And be like, Kasai's gonna be your driver. Kasai's gonna drive Mion, Shion, and Rika from the estate to the school, right? So there's no chance of them getting ambushed on the way to school. Ayo, they could have security detail posted outside the school, because they did that before with in chapter 6, the previous chapter, right? Because Mion had her own bodyguards there outside of the school, because they were hoping to catch Reina, right? So Mion had her own bodyguards, like, posted outside the school, keeping watch on her. So, from what I can tell, looking back on the previous chapters, I feel like that's the answer. Like, goal number 1 would be to keep Tomitake alive, and to keep him from, succumbing to the curse, which would further Takano's goals. But if that can't happen, it seems like the Sonozaki family is the one we have to place our trust in. and get someone like Kasai to keep an eye on, the sisters and Rika, and, post some extra security up at the estate, keep Rika safe. That seems to be the move. And then once enough time has passed and it's clear Takano won't be able to carry out her goals, won't be able to achieve what she wants by, killing Rika and then watching the whole village die. Yeah. From what we've seen thus far, I feel like that's the move. Because that's the thing. The disaster, as far as we've known, the disaster does not happen in chapters 2 and 5. We've seen the story advance, like, I think several weeks, if not months, past the events of, the following events of those, Watanagashi festivals, right? And the great disaster never happens. Chapter 2, you could kind of question it, because, like, maybe they just don't talk about it, but, like, I'm pretty sure when Shion ends up coming back to stab Keiichi, it's at least weeks. At least weeks after it happens. So, like, if they were to have carried out, their grand scheme of the great disaster, it would have been over and done by then, right? So I feel like what that does tell us is that obviously when Shion's fucking crazy, Eureka's not safe there, but, like, Eureka's safety is ensured when she's kept at the Sonozaki house, at the Sonozaki estate. The disaster does not happen, because the disaster does not happen as long as her whereabouts are unknown, or as long as the mountain dogs cannot get to her, right? Because that's the thing, they could say, oh yeah, last time we saw her, she went to the Sonozaki estate, but she never left. But she never left the estate. And therefore, they can't be sure as to whether she's alive or not. They can't be sure as to whether that she went to the Sonozaki seeking protection, because they don't know what's going on with Shion at that point in time. They wouldn't know that she would have lost her fucking mind and done what she did. That is, as far as I can see, that's the safe haven for Rika in that situation. But then the question becomes, how do you, like this sentence right here is posing it, how do you win against Takano? Because that's just dragging it out, really. Because eventually another year is going to come around. And Takano still wants to make this happen regardless, right? She wants to make it happen. How do you truly win against Takano? How do you prevent her from achieving her goals? You would have to actually intervene and stop her, right? And that's one I just don't have an answer for. Short of, like I said, my initial reaction of build up that level of caution in Tometake so that we can prevent his death. Past that, I feel like, keeping Rika at the Sonozaki estate is only something that's going to drag it out longer until the next year comes around and Takano tries again. But maybe I'm wrong. Because maybe that could lead to Takano trying to get bold, trying to do something reckless. Could be. I don't know. Very interesting to consider. Continue. You want to see what's on my mind? Too bad. I don't really care. I was really more concerned with what's on my mind, actually. I'm not showing that to you. Good. In that world, Rika and her friends survived their struggle and broke through the fate of June 1983. It's just my imagination. It's not for me to share with you, yet. I'm sure the world that Rika is about to create is better than anything in my imagination. Even if she's stuck on June 19th in 1983, I'm sure this now ended world will remain one of Rika's brightest fragments either way. No matter how much she struggles, if she actually overcomes her fate, it'll be the most brilliant fragment of her story. I'm sure the life Rika lives makes for a better story than my boring imagination. You want to know what happened to Rika? She made a decision to redo her life once again with Hanyu. She's trying to live her life with all her might. That's what she learned from this world. Her next life has already begun. Do you wonder what that life is like? I'm going there now to check. Do you want to come with me? Yeah? As a matter of fact, I do. I too wish to see what that world looks like. That is definitely a great way to set up for the final chapter, though. Anyway, Ryukshi. Let's talk, big dog. Hi, this is Ryukshi. What's up, bud? Thank you for playing Higurashi When They Cry Kai, Chapter 7, Minagoroshi. This time around, the scenario was almost like the answer page in a book of riddles. True. Almost. We gave you a lot. And, like, hopefully you've pieced it together by now, but, I guess there's still one more. Maybe the scenario was like a side dish we enjoyed alongside all the scenarios up to now. Yeah, fair analogy. You can take it how you like. I just hope you enjoyed it. I did. I was very nervous about releasing the scenario, because a mystery is only good when it's still a mystery. See, I wouldn't say not necessarily. I think the height of enjoyment in a mystery sure is definitely when the mystery is still there, and it's very fun to sit here and theorize and, propose various ideas how things could potentially play out, right? What could be going on behind the scenes, and as you learn more information, you form more theories and whatnot. But I think the reveals of what the truth is can be just as exciting if the mystery itself has you invested, right? If you're genuinely invested into the mystery and what's going on, I feel like the actual reveals themselves can be quite exciting as well. My personal opinion. This scenario marks the end of that mystery. To be honest, I didn't want to release this chapter for a while. However, way too many similar stories are being published with no answers at all. A book of riddles means nothing if there's no answer page in the back. Coming up with an answer when you have no way to see if it's right or not is a little sad, I think. Yeah, and that's part of the excitement of seeing the reveals, right? Maybe it's, a feeling of, yeah, I fucking knew it, or, oh my god, I never saw that coming, right? Or it could even be the disappointment of, like, wow, I don't see how that makes any sense. I feel like there's just as much fun in seeing the reveals as there is in the mystery itself. If there are no answers, you can't get any joy out of reading a book of riddles. I regret to see that there are way too many stories out there that don't offer this kind of joy. That's why I decided to release something that you can compare your answer to for this series. I do like how he sets this up, like, it's no fun if you don't, like, know the answer, right? And then the next one he puts out is Umineko, which is like, you don't deserve to know the answer. You have no right to the truth behind this matter, right? A big point of that is like, you're not privileged, you don't deserve to know every little thing, right? We know what we know, and like what happened there is, a story that only belongs to the people that were there. It's not our responsibility to know what happened there. We don't need to tear apart the lives of the people who were there to try to learn what truly happened and whatnot. I do find that kind of interesting, that the next story to follow this up is one where it's like, no, we're not just going to give you the answers. We will place enough little bits and pieces that you should pick up on it, right? By the end of Umineko, right, you should have the very basics of like what happened. But we're not just going to give you everything. We're not going to give you the answer to the story. If you do figure it out, great. If you don't, well, it was never a story that you deserve to know the answer to. It wasn't your story to know the answers to, it was theirs, right? Very interesting. Since this world had a rather irregular presentation, there may not have been many people who reached what might be called the right answer. True? But it's not really about whether your answer was right or wrong. It's much more about how many questions you raised when reading the story, and how many answers you were able to find. True. Thank you all very much for the solutions you've sent me. They're all wonderful theories, and some were thought out so much more than the actual story that I frequently thought about making them the right answer. It's like that gif of like, damn, fuck, that's so good. Why did I think of that? I gotta imagine, yeah, he's getting like fucking fan mail and shit, being like, fucking all these fan theories and like reading some of them like, oh fuck, I should have gone with that. That makes way more sense. Damn. Also, your support has given me courage to finish writing the 7th chapter of this series. Thank you very much for supporting Higurashi. Finally, I would like to apologize about how I portrayed the Child Consultation Center. I don't know what it was like in 1983, but child consultation centers are not mean places like I depicted in my story. I made the characters look so unfeeling. But in reality, the government today is the #1 hero for us civilians. Maybe in Japan, bud. Like, even when this came out in, like, 06, I still wouldn't be like, yeah, the government cares. Like, as an American, in the modern day, I'm not calling the government the #1 hero in any fucking capacity, especially as far as civilians are concerned. But even back in 06, like, I still wouldn't be like, yeah, government. They're our fucking heroes, but like, hey, if that's what y'all had going on in Japan, fuck, I'm happy for y'all. Must be nice. In fact, those involved with child welfare and youth education are all extremely passionate and selflessly devoted people. Mostly. I've met some very selfish people in some of these areas, but once again, that's here in the US. Obviously, Higurashi wouldn't really know how, child welfare and social services go down in the US, and nor should he. His story doesn't take place in the US. I'm sorry for giving them such a negative image in this chapter. The next chapter, Matsuri Bayashi, is going to be the last one of the series. I'm overwhelmed by the pressure of writing the last chapter of Higurashi When They Cry, which turned out to be such a long story. I hope you'll continue your kind support. Thank you all very much. Nice. Nice. That is a nice little final note to add on to it. Be like, hey, we're about to go into the final chapter, and I just want to say, appreciate y'all. Nice. Nice. But obviously, that is going to do it for this recording here. We've wrapped up Chapter 7. It's done. It's in the books. It was solid. It was very good. Has some very solid, heartfelt moments that I really enjoyed. I will say, it gave Shion a sliver of redemption. I'm not gonna say like, I still don't view her as like one of the homies, right? I still would not call her that. But unfortunately, I can't deny that she also helped, like, when she does go crazy, she does unintentionally prevent a disaster. Like, she is needed, unfortunately. She is a needed element for our story's happy ending. But, like, she definitely had some good moments here, right? She still can be very fucking annoying. She still gets on my fucking nerves, even when she's not crazy. But she had some moments, alright? I'll give props where props is due. She had her moments. It was good. It was good. I liked it. I'm definitely still invested in what's going on. I think Chapter 6 is still my favorite thus far, though. Like, the entire story playing out, and then right up, it wasn't just the ending, but like, just all the build up to the ending was so fucking good too. Just all the build up to even just the festival itself, and then everything that's played out from there, the big fucking finale. Chapter 6 is, I think that still holds my place, my favorite. Chapter 7 is definitely top 3. I'd say. Whether it's number 2 or number 3, that's a difficult one for me to gauge. But it's solid. It's good. What's this fucking Oh. Oh, I see. My VTube Studio crashed. Okay, whatever. I'm not gonna waste the time loading it back up since I'm about to wrap things up anyway. But I guess YouTube Studio's done. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap this one up here. In the next recording session, we'll jump into Chapter 8. I'm excited. Can't wait. But for now, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see y'all in the next one. Until then, peace.